Chapter 709. Straighten your back, maintain a standing posture, lean forward slightly, and shift your center of gravity to the tip of your toes. I'll give you 5 breaths of time to adjust. After that, everyone must stand in place and stand in a military posture for 30 minutes. Whoever moves will be given another 15 minutes. Okay, everyone get ready. On the field, the students of all classes had basically started the military posture segment. In Class 1, Qin Xiong had his hands behind his back and was giving orders to the students in a stern voice. At this moment, there was no trace of kindness on his face. There was only harshness and iron-bloodedness. At this moment, he was a ruthless and merciless general who dominated the battlefield, and the students were his soldiers. In the face of his orders, they could only obey. As for Li Zixuan, no one knew which class he had gone to patrol at this moment, or perhaps he had gone somewhere to cool off. Upon hearing Qin Xiong's orders, the students quickly adjusted their postures. After more than 2 hours of training in the morning, they had long known that Qin Xiong would definitely not go easy on them. The only thing they could do was to try their best to find suitable movements during training to reduce their pain. Stop. The countdown begins. After about 5 breaths of time, Qin Xiong roared loudly. The students who were adjusting their postures or taking the opportunity to secretly rest quickly stood up straight and stood in place with their heads held high and chests out, motionless. After Qin Xiong gave the order, he began to patrol the field. Smack! Chung Chumo, keep your hands close. Don't be lazy. Suddenly, Qin Xiong's merciless reprimand rang out in the crowd. Obviously, Chung Chumo was playing tricks and slacking off again. Qin Huayu, straighten your back and be more spirited. If you continue like this, I'll punish you to stand for another 30 minutes. Reality proved that when Qin Xiong was really strict, he would not show any mercy. Even his own son would also receive a storm-like reprimand if he did not do well. Under such circumstances, everyone began to become serious. Even the little fatty Li Tai tried his best to shrink his big belly, clenched his teeth, and stood upright on the field. Time passed slowly, and so did the students' endurance. If it was only for a short period of time, he believed that 90% of the students here could do it, and they could do it very well. However, Qin Xiong wanted them to maintain this posture for half an hour, and they couldn't move in the middle. Other than Chung Chumo, who had a foundation in martial arts, no one could do it. Midsummer had passed, and the weather in Chong and city had turned cold a few days ago. This made the people who had experienced the hot weather for more than 3 months think that they could finally live a cool life. However, the weather in these 2 days began to heat up again. It was a kind of stuffy heat that pressed on people's hearts, making them restless. As the saying goes, the early Liqiu is chilly, the late Liqiu is hot. Folk believed that the beginning of autumn was related to whether the weather was cool or hot, but meteorology had no conclusive conclusion on this. The sultry weather of heat death was also commonly known as the autumn tiger. At this moment, the students of Yanwang College had a taste of Tiger Chio's bitterness. It turns out that standing in military posture is so tiring. This prince has miscalculated. If I had known, I would have put some K-pok in my shoes. F***CK. This prince feels like he can't take it anymore. How much longer do I have to stand? In less than a quarter of an hour, Li Tai's legs began to tremble slightly. His clothes were completely soaked, as if he had just been fished out of the water. When he saw Pang Feiji and the others training yesterday, he thought that this military training was just running and standing. It didn't seem difficult at all. However, after personally experiencing it today, he realized that he couldn't even stand properly, let alone run in the future. At this moment, he finally understood the difficulty of military training. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It couldn't be helped. This couldn't be blamed on his weak willpower. It was because he was too fat. His legs had to support twice the weight of others, and this kind of hot weather was the most fatal for a fat person. Li Tai really wanted to faint from happiness at this moment. Yes, that's right. The little fatty felt that fainting was the greatest happiness. Li Tai, stand properly. If you dare to move, You will stand in military posture alone for another quarter of an hour later. Qin Xiong's eyes were like torches. He immediately saw that Li Tai's legs were trembling slightly. He immediately shouted. Li Tai's heart trembled. Even if you beat him to death, he wouldn't be willing to stand in military posture for another quarter of an hour. He hurriedly used all his strength to prevent his legs from trembling. He didn't know how long he could last, but as long as he could, he would. At this moment, he really wanted to beat the person who invented military posture to death. Wasn't this torture? Qin Xiong's voice was loud. Not only did the student from Class 1 hear it, even the students from Class 2 who were not far away heard it. Everyone saw that the Academy's top scorer, the current Emperor's most beloved prince, had been reprimanded. How could they dare to take any chances? Qin Xiong meant what he said. At this moment, he was really using the attitude of an army to govern them. Therefore, even though many people's legs were already starting to ache, they still didn't dare to slack off. They all gritted their teeth and bitterly held on. Qinke, you have to hold on by yourself. This is not the palace. Father and mother can't help you, and I can't help you either. Hold on, Qinke. Standing in the front row, Li Chengxian was sweating profusely. At this moment, he was very worried that Li Tai couldn't hold on and would be punished by Qin Xiong. He knew that since Qin Xiong said it, he would definitely do it. He wanted to help Li Tai, but he couldn't do anything. He could only silently encourage Li Tai in his heart. Imperial Palace. After the morning court, Li Er went straight to the Lijiang Hall in the West Court. Because of the hot weather, he couldn't work at all. He could only go to Empress Zhangxuan's place to talk for a while to relieve his boredom. When he arrived at the Lijiang Hall, he found that Empress Zhangxun and concubine Yang were both sitting in the hall worriedly. Their eyebrows were all knitted together. Oh, what has made the Empress and concubine so worried? Li Er strode in and asked with a smile. Empress Zhangxun and concubine Yang were both shocked. They hurriedly stood up and bowed. Greetings, Your Majesty. Li Er indicated that they didn't need to be so courteous. Then, he repeated the question just now. The two of them looked at each other and hesitated. In the end, it was Empress Zhangxun who spoke up. Your Majesty, my sister and I are worried about Chengxian, Qinke, and Ke. We thought that the weather would cool down after autumn, but we didn't expect that it would become hot again recently. I just sent someone to the Imperial Astronomer and learned that it will be the same for the next few days. However, Chengxian and the others still have military training. What should we do? If they get heat stroke, then? Chapter 710. A mother's love was innate. Facts had proven that even though Empress Zhangxun was the mother of a country, she was not exempt from this. She would also worry about her son. Concubine Yang was the same. Li Er was startled, then said, I remember that Li Zishuan once said that a sword's edge is sharpened, and the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. This military training might be a very good training for Qinke, Chengxian, and Ke. Besides, Li Zishuan is very prudent in his actions. He definitely won't let Chengxian and the others get heat stroke. Empress and concubine Yang don't worry. Although Li Er couldn't bear to see his three sons train hard under the hot sun. As an emperor who was about to take over the world, he understood the meaning behind military training very well. Therefore, he could only comfort Empress Zhangxun and concubine Yang in front of him. My sister and I are not unreasonable people. We know that Yanhuang College's military training this time is very beneficial to Chengxian and the others, but we still can't help but worry. Empress Zhangxun stroked the hair in front of her forehead and said worriedly. Li Er hugged the two beauties and said with a smile, Don't worry. When I have time in 2 days, I will bring the Empress and concubine Yang to Yanhuang College to see with your own eyes. At that time, you'll be at ease. The two were overjoyed and quickly broke free from Li Er's embrace. They bowed and said, Thank you, Your Majesty. Yanhuang College on the sports field. Half an hour passed, but Li Tai felt as long as 100 years. Right now, he was completely relying on his will to support himself, a will that was unwilling to be punished for increasing the time. The little fatty felt that his 2 legs no longer belonged to him. Just as his head was dizzy and he was about to faint, Qin Xiong's voice sounded beside him. Okay, time's up. Everyone, rest where you are, but you're not allowed to sit down. Sit down after 7 minutes. Otherwise, this general will punish him to stand in military posture for another 30 minutes. When many students heard that they could rest, they hurriedly bent their legs and prepared to sit down, but when they heard the second half of Qin Xiong's sentence, they were all scared out of their wits and quickly stood up. Li Tai was the most unlucky. Half of his body was already about to fall. But at this moment, he didn't know where he got the strength from, but he forcefully changed the direction of his 200 kilograms of fat and stood up again. It had to be said that the little fatty's desire to live was very strong. F***CK. I almost fell for it. If you don't want to sit, then so be it. It's good to stand and move your legs. As long as you don't stand in military posture, I'll do anything you want me to. Although he was still standing, Li Tai felt 100 times happier than before. Li Changxian, who was in the front row, heaved a sigh of relief. When he turned his head and saw that Li Tai was about to sit down, his heart was in his throat. If he really sat down, he felt that with Li Tai's current state, he would definitely faint from exhaustion. Okay, you can sit down and rest now. I'll give you 15 minutes to rest. After 15 minutes, this general will teach you how to turn on the spot. After a while, Qin Xiong instructed loudly. All the students fell to the ground as if they had been pardoned. Some were sitting, some were lying on their backs, and some were half lying. In short, they were in all kinds of strange shapes and were swaying left and right. What no one noticed was that Qin Xiong, who had been strict the entire morning, actually had a hint of a smile on his face. A quarter of an hour later, Qin Xiong woke everyone up on time. Then, they began training to turn left and right. Compared to standing in a military posture, this was quite easy because they didn't need to maintain a posture and not move. Clang, 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 clang. After about half an hour of training, the sound of gongs and drums could be heard everywhere in the academy. The exhausted students suddenly felt refreshed, and all of them looked at their instructors with eager eyes. When they were visiting the academy, the teachers not only introduced them to the usage of the new items in the academy, but also explained the meaning of the gongs and drums. Now, they knew that school was about to end. This nightmarish morning was finally coming to an end. The instructors of the various classes also stopped training at this moment. They all looked at the position of the first class. They had to listen to the chief instructor, Qin Xiong. Thus, the students of the 16 classes all looked at Qin Xiong. Some of them even had a hint of pleading in their eyes. This morning's training was really too torturous. It was only now that they understood that the chicken soup for the soul that Li Zishuan gave everyone in the morning was poisonous. Poisonous chicken soup. Feeling the eager gazes of more than 600 people, Qin Xiong paused, then waved his hand and said loudly, "School is over. Eat. All students must gather here at 1:30 p.m. Latecomers must run 10 laps around the sports field. Oh, time to eat. Ha! Finally, we can rest." Although Qin Xiong was shouting fiercely at the back, these students only cared about having a good time now. Who had the time to care about whether they would live or die in 2 hours? As soon as Qin Xiong finished speaking, the students of the 16 classes immediately burst into cheers. Then, one by one, they burst out of nowhere and all rushed towards the canteen. After training for the whole morning, they were all starving. Li Zishuan appeared out of nowhere and stood next to Qin Xiong. He smirked and said, "These kids are still too young. Do they really think that the nightmare is over? Hee hee. This is just the beginning." Huff. Speaking of the hungriest people, Li Tai could definitely be counted as one of them. He had a large body, and his training had consumed a large amount of energy. His appetite was even larger. At this moment, he felt that he could eat an entire cow. Oh, if he couldn't eat a cow, then he could eat a pig. He wanted to eat as soon as possible, so he could only run forward. Otherwise, he would have to line up with an empty stomach and watch others eat. That would be terrible. When he thought of the delicious chicken and dompa meat in the canteen, Li Tai felt that even if he was tired from running now, it was worth it. Quick, give me 5 plates of chicken, 5 plates of dompa meat, and 5 bowls of rice. Li Tai ran to the cafeteria while gasping for breath. He went straight to the most expensive food window and ordered the middle-aged man who was in charge of the food. Thinking that he would be able to eat delicious food soon, Li Tai was almost drooling. Yamacho has a rule that all students in the academy have a uniform meal this month. There are only 2 vegetarian dishes and a bowl of mung bean soup every day. There is enough rice. Student, do you want more? The middle-aged man was fat and had big ears. He bent down and said to Li Tai. Li Tai, who was looking forward to the delicious food, was stunned. He felt that the entire academy was full of malice, especially from Li Zishuan. They wanted him to buy something that he couldn't buy even if he had money. Damn, you win. Li Tai gritted his teeth and said word by word. What did you say? Hey, are you going to eat or not? There are still people lining up behind you. The middle-aged man urged. Eat. Give me 2 plates of vegetables and 5 bowls of rice. Li Tai said fiercely, as if the person in front of him had a deep hatred for him. Chapter 711. Yinhuang College Cafeteria. Qingke, why are you eating so much? And there are only 2 servings of vegetables, Li Chengxian arrived late. By the time he arrived, there were more than 10 people at each window in the cafeteria. He finally managed to get a meal, and then he saw Li Tai eating with his head down by the window. He walked over, but when he saw that there were 5 bowls of rice on the table, he was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. Oh, it's Big Brother. Sit. When Li Tai heard this, he raised his head and saw that it was Li Chengxian. As he ate, he pointed to the chair opposite him and gestured for Li Chengxian to sit down. Then he replied vaguely, Do you think I want to? I'm starving. I've never felt so hungry before. Oh, it just so happens that Big Brother's appetite has always been small. Why don't you give me a dish? Although the little fatty used a negotiating tone, his actions didn't seem like he was negotiating with anyone. Before he finished speaking, his claws had already reached for Li Chengxian's bowl. Li Chengxian's forehead was full of black lines. He originally wanted to come over to care for Li Tai, but he didn't expect to lose a bowl of food before he even said a word. Fortunately, he was well-mannered, or he would have cursed a long time ago. Qingke, you eat. I'm not very hungry. Since what was done couldn't be undone, Li Chengxian could only accept his fate. He couldn't go and snatch the food back, right? How shameful would that be? Hey, Big Brother Atai, you're all here. At this moment, Li Ku also walked over with a plate of food and sat down. He greeted them. Aku, are you tired this morning? Can you still bear it? As the elder brother, Li Chengxian naturally had to care for his younger brother. Replying to Big Brother, I have a foundation in martial arts, so the morning training was nothing to me. I'm not very tired. Big Brother, how are you? Li Ku put down the plate and replied. Li Chengxian nodded and said, I can still bear it, but Qingke looks a little. How about I send someone to send a letter to Father and ask him to help Qingke be exempted from this military training? Oh, no. Although Li Tai didn't want military training, he was a rational person. He knew that Li Er wouldn't help him in this matter. So he quickly shook his head and said, Thank you for your kindness, Big Brother, but there's no need. I can still persevere. Once I'm full, I won't be afraid of General Qin's training. After saying that, he looked at Li Ku and said, Aku, you just said that you have a foundation in martial arts and that you're not tired even after training for an entire morning. So I'm sure you're not very hungry now, right? How about you share this dish with me? The little fatty's eyes were fixed on the 2 bowls of food in front of Li Ku. His meaning was obvious. How could Li Ku not understand? He smiled bitterly in his heart. Was this considered lifting a rock to smash his own foot? Atai, if you're not full, you could take my share. Li Ku forced out a smile as he said. Although he had a foundation in martial arts, he was also hungry after being tired all morning. Although there were only 2 dishes of vegetables, when he thought about the fact that he still had to continue training in the afternoon, he still had to eat vegetables. It was better than having no vegetables, right? Aku, you're very kind. After we leave the academy during the holidays, I'll definitely repay you tenfold. Hearing this, Li Tai was overjoyed. He quickly picked a bowl of vegetables and brought it over, then laughed loudly. Qingke, didn't you dislike vegetables in the past? Li Chengxian covered his face. He felt that the royal family's face was about to be completely thrown away by Li Tai. The dignified king of Wei had actually fallen to the point of begging everywhere. If this were to spread out, there would definitely be many righteous people jumping out to accuse Li Tai of being disrespectful. F***CK. Isn't it all because of Xiao Xian? It would have been better if Li Changxian didn't ask. Once he mentioned Li Tai, he immediately jumped up and said, I think he's deliberately targeting us. This cafeteria used to have gnawing chicken, dompa meat, and so on. But after the military training, there's nothing left. There's only vegetables. What can I do? Xiao Xian must be using his position to avenge private grudges. He's thinking of ways to torture us. When the holidays are over, I'll definitely report him to father and say that he's abusing students. Li Changxian couldn't help but lean back and cover the food in his bowl with his hand. Because Li Tai was too agitated when he said these words, some rice grain sprayed over. Qingke, Xiao Xian is also doing this for us. Smack. I haven't seen you for a while, and you're talking bad about me again. Just as Li Changxian was about to speak up for Li Zishuan, he saw a hand coming toward the back of Li Tai's head. Then came Li Zishuan's angry voice and Li Tai's coughing from choking on his food. Li Zishuan placed the plate of food on the table next to Li Tai. Behind him was Pang Feiji. The two of them just happened to sit next to Li Tai and Li Changxian. There was only an aisle between them. Then, Li Zishuan said in an unfriendly tone, You're insulting your teacher in public. If Her Majesty and the courtiers find out, do you think they'll help you or me? And you still have the time to gossip about me at a time like this? Looks like the training this morning wasn't heavy enough. Li Tai had just been hit so hard that he couldn't speak. Now that he heard Li Zishuan's slightly threatening words, his face turned green. He hurriedly said, Xiao Xian? Not Yamacho. Your Excellency Yamacho, what you just heard is not Tai's true words. Please don't take it seriously. Li Ko almost burst out laughing. He hurriedly covered his mouth. Li Zishuan, however, didn't fall for the little fatty's trick. He shook his head and said, What you said is what you said. Would anyone force you to say something against your will? Li Tai was speechless. Li Changxian hurriedly came out to smooth things over and said, Xiao Xian, Qingke was just saying that. She didn't mean any harm. Don't take it to heart. He came to Yanhuang College as a country's crown prince to supervise the studies. Naturally, he could directly call Li Zishuan by his nickname. Li Zishuan nodded and said with a smile, Okay, I'll give Changxian some face today and won't pursue this matter. In fact, he was just scaring Li Tai. He didn't have any intention of delving into the matter. Hee. Thank you, big brother. Thank you, Yamacho. Li Tai chuckled and then continued to bury his head in eating. The 4 servings of vegetables were quickly swept clean by him. There was only half a bowl of rice left. Li Zishuan frowned. He thought that since the cafeteria didn't serve meat, Li Tai could lose weight. But now it didn't seem feasible. After all, it was mentioned in biology that excess sugar in the human body would be converted into fat. So eating too much rice would also make one gain weight, right? Thinking of this, Li Zishuan turned his head and looked at Li Tai maliciously, who knew that Li Tai was also looking at him. His eyes were full of greed. Chapter 712. That, Yamacho, can you give me a bowl of food? Li Tai looked at Li Zishuan. To be precise, he was looking at Li Zishuan's bowl. Right now, he only knew how to eat. He didn't look like a noble prince at all. Li Zishuan didn't expect the little fatty to be so cruel to himself for food. In this situation, he couldn't say what he wanted to say. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if he drove the little fatty crazy. I'll give you half a bowl. You ate the food of 4 people, and you still have the nerve to ask for more? After that, Li Zishuan picked up some food with his chopsticks and threw it into Li Tai's bowl. This little display of skill made everyone's eyes pop out. Li Ke gave a thumbs up and said, Yamacho, you have good control. This strength is just right. Li Zishuan smiled slightly and lowered his head to eat. To be honest, although there was no meat in the academy's cafeteria today, the vegetarian dishes were pretty good. Otherwise, Li Tai wouldn't have eaten 4 bowls in a row. Hunger was one reason, but the vegetables were also good. Qingke, don't be greedy. The academy is already doing you a favor. You should know that according to Uncle Qin, he wants to train you like an army. Ask Feiji if the food in the army camp is better than the food in Yanwang College. After lunch, Li Zixuan stood up and looked at Li Tai meaningfully. Without waiting for Li Tai to ask, Pang Feiji quickly said, "Of course not. Your Highnesses may not know, but although the academy only has vegetables to eat now, the taste is more than 10 times better than the food in the army camp. The oil is also much better than the food in the army camp." Li Changxian suddenly said, "I see. It seems that we have all misunderstood." Li Tai was stunned and scratched his head. "I see. Hee. Thank you, Yamacho. Come on. I don't want you to thank me. Qingke, you might start scolding me again after I leave." Li Zixuan pursed his lips and said, "You guys should go to the classroom and rest for a while. Don't be late for the afternoon training. I'm leaving now." After that, he waved his hand and walked towards the gate of the academy. He had to go back and take a nap at noon. He had lunch in the academy cafeteria just to listen to the students' reactions. "You guys go to the dormitory first. I'm going back to the dormitory." After Li Zixuan left, Li Tai tilted his head and thought for a while. Then, he suddenly said something and ran away. "Sai, Qingke, the military training is starting soon. Why are you going to the dormitory now?" The teaching building of Yanwang College was very close to the sports field, but the student dormitory was very far away from the sports field. There was only half an hour left before the military training began in the afternoon. The students chose to take a nap in the classroom instead of going back to the dormitory. So, Li Changxian shouted, Nothing. Big brother, could you guys go back to the classroom first? I definitely won't be late in the afternoon." The little fatty's intermittent response came from the front. Li Chengxian had no choice but to take Li Ku back to Guanghua Building. In the afternoon, almost half an hour, most of the students came to the sports field in advance. After all, no one wanted to be punished for being late. "Oh no, why isn't Qingke here yet?" Everyone else gathered in twos and threes to talk and laugh. Only Li Chengxian was like a little wife who was eagerly waiting for her husband to come home. He kept tiptoeing to look at the back of the group, looking very anxious. "Big brother, is Atai not here yet?" Li Ke walked over from class 2 and asked. "Sai, he's not here yet. Qingke is really too much. It's just a short time, and she insisted on going back to the dormitory, but she still hasn't come back. Don't be late. Otherwise, you'll definitely be punished," Li Changxian said with a worried face. "Sai, he's here. Big brother, Atai is here." Just as Li Changxian was sighing, Li Tai suddenly shouted excitedly. Li Changxian took a closer look and saw Li Tai running over here. Behind him was a muscular person. It was Qin Xiong. Li Ke hurriedly returned to his class, and Li Changxian heaved a sigh of relief. He thought to himself that Li Tai's timing was really accurate. He just made it before Qin Xiong. Huff. "Hey, big brother, I'm back." Li Tai returned to class 1 and then came over to greet Li Changxian. Li Changxian nodded and said, It's good that you're back." He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Li Tai seemed to have become taller. Very good. No one is late. Military training will begin now. Everyone will stand in military posture for half an hour. Like before, you will have 5 breaths to adjust your posture. Start preparing." After a while, Qin Xiong came to the front of the team. He glanced at the students of class 1 and said in a deep voice. Li Chengxian looked back worriedly at Li Tai before starting to prepare. However, he was destined to be worried for nothing because the little fatty's face was full of relaxation at this moment. He was completely different from the person in the morning. "Everyone stop. The time starts now." After a while, Qin Xiong shouted loudly. The students all perked up and stood in military posture with their heads held high. Qin Xiong began to enter the team to patrol, as usual. Not bad. Qingke, continue to maintain it." When he passed by Li Tai's position, Qin Xiong noticed that something was different. At this moment, Li Tai's legs were straight and not as loose as they were in the morning. Thus, he praised him with relief. "Yes, General Qin." The little fatty shouted loudly, full of vigor. The students were puzzled. Was this still that Li Tai who couldn't even stand properly in the morning? Or was Li Tai's current state just forcing himself? They weren't the only ones who thought so. Qin Xiong also thought so. However, what happened next made everyone doubt life. After a quarter of an hour, Li Tai didn't show any fatigue on his face and was still very relaxed. After a quarter of an hour, Li Tai didn't stagger and was still motionless. After half an hour, Li Tai only pursed his lips and didn't show any signs of collapse. Qin Xiong stared suspiciously at Li Tai for a long time, but he couldn't find any clues. He could only return to the front of the team and say loudly, "Okay, everyone rest where you are. The rules are the same as in the morning. Here, I'll focus on praising Li Tai. He has improved a lot." The students of Class 1 immediately cast their gazes on Li Tai. The little fatty smiled as he raised his head and thought to himself, "You're so arrogant. Hee hee." Fortunately, this king was quick-witted and stuffed cotton in my shoes during the lunch break. This way, standing in military posture will be much easier. It had to be said that the little fatty was really the king of points. Chapter 713. Qin, you're good. The amount of training in the afternoon wasn't any less than in the morning, but you look much more relaxed now. In the afternoon, taking advantage of the free break, Li Chengxian came to Li Tai's side and said happily. He had been worried that Li Tai wouldn't be able to hold on and faint midway. But now Li Tai's face was only a little red and his body was sweating a lot. He still looked very energetic, which made Li Chengxian heave a sigh of relief. The little fatty, who was obsessed with cleanliness before, couldn't be particular about it now. Seeing him lying on the grass, not only did he not dislike it, but he was also extremely satisfied. After hearing Li Chengxian's words, Li Tai smiled proudly and said, "Hee hee, thanks to Big Brother, now I'm not afraid of standing in military posture at all." Li Chengxian didn't care about his image as a crown prince and sat down beside Li Tai, then asked in a low voice, "Qin, do you have some secret to standing in military posture? Can you tell me about it?" With his understanding of Li Tai, how could he not know that there was something fishy about it? The reason why he didn't show it was completely to cooperate with Li Tai's acting. But standing in military posture was also a big challenge for Li Chengxian. So he really wanted to know the secret of Li Tai's sudden ease in standing in military posture. Li Tai thought for a while and said, "I'll tell you when we go back to the dorm tonight. Even if I tell you now, you can't do it. But Big Brother, don't tell anyone else. Otherwise, if Duke knows, he'll definitely increase the training volume again." If it was in the past, Li Tai would definitely not share this kind of thing with Li Chengxian. But after hanging out with Li Zishuan for so long, he found that his interest wasn't in palace politics. And this time, Li Chengxian came to Yanhuang College to accompany him in military training, which made him have a much better impression of this big brother that he didn't like before. Seeing that Li Tai agreed, Li Chengxian smiled and hurriedly said, "Qin, don't worry. Big Brother definitely won't tell anyone. But shouldn't we tell little Ke?" Li Tai shook his head and said, "No need, no need. Xiao Ke's foundation in martial arts is even better than Cho Ox's. Why would he need to use these unorthodox methods? Who knows, with more training, his martial arts might even improve." Li Tai thought about it, and also felt that what Li Tai said made sense. He nodded and said, "And I got it. Hey, what are you two talking about? What is it that you can't let others know?" When the two of them were talking about the main topic, suddenly, Chung Chumo's head popped out from behind them, giving the two of them a fright. "Damn it, ugly bull. Do you know that you can scare someone to death?" Li Tai reacted and was furious. He flipped over and was about to fight Chung Chumo to the death. Sigh. "Qin, you haven't told me what you were discussing. Discuss your sister. I just want to beat someone up right now." Clang, clang, clang. With the sound of gongs and drums, the students who had been tortured for the whole day heaved a sigh of relief. Qin Xiong didn't make things difficult for them and decisively announced that school was dismissed. Compared to noon, there was more time at night. Li Tai leisurely went to have dinner with Li Chengxian, Li Ku, and Chung Chumo before returning to the dormitory. Yanhuang College's dormitory was usually 6 people to a dormitory. Li Chengxian, Li Tai, Chung Chumo, Qin Huayu, Yuchi Baolin, and Sun Zifan stayed in the same dormitory. "Qin, let's go. Let's go to the bathhouse, and then we can rest." Back in the dormitory, Li Changxian said to Li Tai, who was sitting on the bed. The little fatty had a strong physique, so of course, he slept on the bottom bunk. Otherwise, he would definitely flip over. At this moment, he leaned against the wall and waved. Big brother, go ahead. I'll just take a bath in the dormitory. Ha! Chinke, you're afraid of being naked with everyone, aren't you? Chung Chumo, who was opposite him, laughed loudly. Chung Chumo, you're bullshitting. I'm just tired and don't want to go to the bathhouse. Li Tai seemed to have been poked in his sore spot. He straightened his body and scolded angrily. Hee, is that so? Then, Chinke, if you're not afraid, why don't you come to the bathhouse with us to take a bath now? Chung Chumo said with a smile. Li Changxian saw Li Tai's embarrassed face and hurriedly helped him out. Cough, cough. Chonyo, if Chinke doesn't want to go, then forget it. Let's go first. Baolin, Huayu, Ziffin, let's go. No. I'm not going either. You guys go ahead. Sun Ziffin also shouted. When he thought of so many people standing together to take a bath naked, he panicked a little. In the end, he was still not used to this kind of public bathhouse that had never appeared in the Tang Empire before. Chung Chumo immediately laughed loudly and said, Ha, looks like it's not just Chinke who's afraid. Ziffin, you're also afraid. TSK, could it be that all fatties are afraid of being naked in front of others? At this point, Chung Chumo's eyes and expression suddenly became extremely wretched. Scram! The two fatties let out angry roars at the same time, so loud that it hurt the eardrums of others. Seeing that he was about to be beaten, Chung Chumo hurriedly pulled Qin Huayu and Yuchi Baolin and fled. Li Changxian thought for a moment and said, Chinke, Ziffin, you guys can't be like this in the long run. It's fine if the weather is hot now, but what will you guys do when the weather turns cold? Although they could take a bath in the academy's dormitory, they could only take a cold bath. That was why Li Changxian advised them to take a cold bath. Li Tai and Sun Ziffin looked at each other and then said in unison, Then we'll take a bath when we're back during the holidays. Li Changxian immediately retreated and turned to leave. Then, the two fatties in the dormitory, one big and one small, stared at each other. After a while, Li Tai said, I'll take a bath first. Ziffin, you're not allowed to peek. Sun Ziffin made a disgusted vomiting gesture and said, Chinke, you're really narcissistic. Only a ghost would want to peek at you, but you have to hurry, or they'll be back in a while. Yes, of course. Li Tai didn't take it to heart. He hurriedly picked up a change of clothes and rushed into the inner cubicle. Then, he didn't forget to close the inner door. Hey, Chinke, hurry up. If you delay any longer, Miumo and the others will have to come back. Not long after Li Tai went in, Sun Ziffin began to impatiently rush him from outside. Damn, what's with the rush? How long has it been? It's been so long. Chinke, if you delay any longer, I'll rush in. Sun Ziffin threatened. Li Tai, who was inside, panicked and shouted, Damn, don't you dare. Wait a little longer, I'll be done soon. With that, he sped up, wiped himself carelessly, put on his clothes, and ran out in a hurry. Hey, I'm finally out. It's my turn. Sun Ziffin slipped in nimbly. Chapter 714. After about 15 minutes, Li Changxian walked in from outside and saw Li Tai already lying on the bed. Big brother, you're back. Li Tai opened his eyes and greeted him. Then, he closed his eyes and went back to sleep. He had exercised a lot today, so he was very tired. Okay, Li Changxian responded, then put the clothes he changed out of under the bed. He heard the sound of water in the room and guessed that Sun Ziffin was still inside. So, he bent down and whispered to Li Tai, Chinke, before Chu Mo and the others come back, quickly tell me the secret of standing in military posture. Li Tai patted his head when he heard that. Only then did he remember what he promised Li Changxian during the day. He pulled the quilt over and said to Li Changxian, Here, big brother, look, the secret is in here. Li Changxian took a closer look and saw that the corner of the quilt was cracked, and that place was actually empty. He was a little confused and asked, Chinke, where's the quilt core in this part of the quilt? Li Tai laughed and said, It's all in my shoes. With this thing, when standing in military posture. The soles of my feet will be much easier. Anyway, the weather's hot now, so I don't need a quilt. Li Changxian suddenly understood, but at the same time, he was very speechless. Late at night, a quarter to midnight, Yinhuang College, which had been noisy all day, finally returned to silence. Oh, it cannot be said that there was no sound at all, because there were still sounds of snoring in the student dormitory. Obviously, the students were very tired tonight. Many of them had never been so tired since they were born, so naturally, they slept soundly. Beep, 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 beep. At this moment, there was a sudden and sharp sound in front of the student dormitory door. It sounded like the cry of an ape eagle at night, but also like the scream of a ghost. The first to wake up was naturally the military training instructor, led by Pang Feiji. Lord Zhu, why are you here? In order to facilitate the military training, Li Zishuan's team of personal guards stayed in the student dormitory at night. Feiji, take the brothers and inform the dormitories one by one. Get all the students to gather. Whoever doesn't show up in 15 minutes will be punished by running 10 laps. Li Zishuan did not answer Pang Feiji's question. Instead, he ordered in a deep voice. Lord Zhu, why did you ask them to gather? Pang Feiji was dumbfounded. No matter how hard he thought about it, he could not figure out why Li Zishuan had asked everyone to gather. What are you talking about? This is a military order. Don't tell me you want to run laps in the field, too? Li Zishuan roared. Yes. Please wait for a moment, Lord Zhu. I'll go now. Pang Feiji shuddered and immediately woke up. He quickly turned around and called for the rest of the guards to rush into the dormitory and wake the students up. Their shouts immediately rang out in the dormitory corridor. All students, come out and gather immediately. Those who don't arrive in a quarter of an hour will be punished with 10 laps. All students, come out and gather immediately. Those who don't arrive in a quarter of an hour will be punished with 10 laps. Li Zishuan continued to blow the bamboo whistle outside, and the quiet Yinhuang Academy suddenly became noisy. Even the teacher's dormitory not far away lit up at this moment. What? Gathering everyone at this time? Are you kidding me? That's right. I'm so sleepy. We've all taken off our clothes. How are we supposed to gather? Hey, all right, stop wasting time. If you don't go down, you'll be punished with running. Hurry up and put on your clothes. All right, hurry up and get up. Zhishuan, stop sleeping. At first, the students subconsciously resisted. However, when they thought about the harsh military training instructors during the day, they began to accept reality and quickly got up to put on their clothes. F*CK. Who the F*CK is making noise in the middle of the night? Are they immoral? Li Tai was furious when he was woken up. He had been sleeping comfortably. He had never been so comfortable before. However, he was woken up by someone. One could imagine the anger in his heart. Qingke, don't say any more. Hurry up and get up, or you'll be punished later. Li Chengxian wished he could cover Li Tai's mouth. If the instructors outside heard what he said, there would definitely be new problems. After a long time, Li Tai finally bid farewell to the bed and ran out with Li Chengxian and the others. In the end, the little fatty still didn't want to be punished with running laps. Class 1 is here, Class 2 is here. In front of the dormitory, there was a crowd of people. The students were all looking for their classes. Li Tai saw Li Zishuan with a bamboo tube stuffed in his mouth and standing in front of the crowd. He immediately gritted his teeth in hatred. Clearly, he understood that tonight's gathering at night was instigated by Li Zishuan. Beep, beep, beep. Time's up. Instructors of each class, do a head count. After a while, Li Zishuan blew the bamboo whistle and ordered. The crowd immediately quieted down. Only the instructors were walking around in the middle. After a while, the instructors began to report. Reporting to Yamacho, all of Class 1 is here. No one is late. Reporting to Yamacho, all of Class 2 is here. No one is late. Reporting to Yamacho, all of Class 16 is here. No one is late. After a series of reports, Li Zishuan found that none of the more than 600 students were late. He nodded and then said in a deep voice, Tonight's sudden gathering was just a small experiment I did to test your ability to respond to crisis situations. Very good. No one is late. In the future, this kind of experiment will occur irregularly, and the time given to you to prepare will also be reduced by half. So next time, if you don't want to be late and be punished, you have to gather immediately after hearing my whistle. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Although they were unwilling to agree, the military training during the day still made many people subconsciously obey the order. Louder! Do you still want to sleep at night? Lisa Schwan roared sternly. Yes, sir. The students yelled at the top of their lungs. Lisa Schwan nodded with satisfaction and said, Well, okay. Everyone is dismissed. Go back to the dormitory to rest. Dismissed? The students were a little confused. You called us to gather in the middle of the night just to say a few words? Isn't this a joke? Li Tai glared at Lisa Schwan with fire in his eyes. At this moment, the little fatty really wished that his eyes could kill. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't beat Lisa Schwan, he would definitely go up and fight it out with Lisa Schwan right now. Let's go. Chinke, go back to sleep quickly. We still have to wake up early tomorrow. Afraid that Li Tai would do something stupid, Li Chengxian quickly came over and pulled him back and said. The two brothers followed the army of students and walked back to the dormitory. Lisa Schwan, who was a little mischievous, patted his butt and turned around to go home and sleep. What he didn't expect was that there was also a surprise attack thousands of miles away on the sea tonight. Chapter 715. In the middle of the vast sea, a nameless island that had been lonely for countless years welcomed a large group of guests tonight. Your Highness, there's a small island up ahead. Should we approach it? In the southern direction of the small island, there was an unusually large fleet of ships. There were at least 1,000 of them. Their sails fluttered in the wind, whistling as they faced the sea breeze. On the deck of the largest ship at the front of the fleet, a soldier bowed to a middle-aged man. Let's approach it first. Have the 6 soldiers rest on the island for the night. At the same time, send someone up to see if there's any fresh water or fresh fruit. The middle-aged man was none other than Li Shaogong, and this fleet was the Great Tang fleet that had sailed south for more than 4 months. In truth, this fleet had begun to return 10 some days ago, and the closer it got to the Great Tang, the faster it moved. Everyone couldn't suppress their homesickness, and after drifting for so long, quite a few people in the fleet had fallen ill. Most of them were dizziness and vomiting. Although it wasn't fatal, it was still a major problem if dragged on for too long. Thus, in the last few days, the fleet had begun to sail at night under the moonlight. As they entered the inland waters, they would often encounter small islands. Li Shaogong would also order his soldiers to collect fresh water and fruit from these islands. With more than 4 months of experience at sea, he was well aware of the importance of these things. They could save lives at sea. As for whether or not there was fresh water on these islands, it was naturally possible. On some larger islands, there would be precipitation, whether in the form of rain or snow, that would form ponds. However, not all large islands had such ponds. This was a matter of probability. Yes, Your Highness. The soldier bowed and then climbed onto the mast to signal the fleet behind him. The massive fleet began to slowly approach the island. But to everyone's surprise, not far behind the fleet, there were 30-some small boats following. Boss, they have so many people. Why are we following them? Of course, they weren't speaking in Chinese. On the leading boat, a sloppy man asked the scar-faced man in front of him. The scar-faced man spat and viciously said, Bah, so what if they have more people? Once they're asleep on the shore, we'll steal a few of their merchant ships and strike it rich. After following us for so many days, we can't let our brothers work for nothing. The sloppy man looked at the fleet in front of him and swallowed his saliva in fear. He said weakly, Boss, this seems to be a caravan from the Great Tang. If we make a move and anger the Great Tang Emperor, how can we be a match for them? Baka. The scar-faced man slapped the sloppy man's head, and then he heard him angrily say, Coward. Even if the Great Tang Emperor has a magnificent army, what can he do to us if we hide in the sea? Tell the brothers to buck up and listen to my instructions later. After we finish this job, We can go back to eat and drink and look for beautiful girls. Hi. The sloppy man saw that Scarface was angry and quickly went to inform the rest of the crew. Scarface stood at the bow of the ship and looked at the big ships in front of him. With a greedy face, he muttered to himself, "With these big ships, who on this sea could be a match for me? Nakamura Kawayudo? Ha ha ha! Your Highness, there's a lot of fresh water and coconuts on the island. There's also a cave. Do you want to go in and rest for a night?" After the fleet docked, Li Shaogong first sent a group of people to the island to check. After a while, a soldier came to report. "Send the 6 soldiers ashore to rest first. Then, let the envoys follow me into the cave." Li Shaogong thought for a while and said. This time, he not only brought back a full ship of goods, but also the envoys from the Nanyang countries. Compared to when he went, the size of their fleet was now a little bigger. "Yes, Your Highness." The soldier quickly went to pass the order. Then, he heard Li Shaogong say, "Wait, pass down the order. There must be at least 4 guards on each ship and at least 10 guards on the big ships." In this vast dark night, Li Shaogong had to be careful. He did not want any accidents to happen when they were so close to the Great Tang border. "Yes, Your Highness." Seeing that Li Shaogong had nothing else to say, the soldier went to make the arrangements. Li Shaogong jumped off the big ship and took a small wooden boat ashore. "Oh, finally, I can step on the ground." After a while, a few people with dark skin and different clothes came up. Obviously, they were envoys from other countries. One of them had a big beard and a big mole on his cheek. He stood on the island and sighed happily. After all, sailing the ocean was not a small challenge for many people. Only those who had drifted on the sea could feel how happy it was to stand on the ground. "Your Highness, how long will it take to reach the Great Tang Empire?" The bearded man sighed for a while, then caught up with Li Shaogong and asked. Naturally, someone translated for Li Shaogong. After listening, Li Shaogong said, "Envoy, don't worry. In less than half a month, the fleet will reach the capital Chang'an." The bearded man immediately said happily, "Huh, great. I can finally see the Celestial Empire." "Did you see that? The army is shore. Their big ships can't get close to the shore. Our chance is here." At the rear of the fleet, Scarface said excitedly to his men, "Hee, boss is wise." The sloppy man was bitter in his heart, but his mouth was full of praise. "Go, leave a small number of people to watch the ships. The rest of you, follow me to dive onto their big ships. Be nimble." Coincidentally, at this moment, a dark cloud covered the moon in the sky. Seeing this, Scarface immediately ordered, "Yes, boss." After a while, under Scarface's lead, more than 100 men in black took off their clothes, quietly went into the water, and swam toward the few big ships at the back of the Great Tang fleet. "We should be able to reach Chang in a few days. I wonder how and Yaya are doing?" On a large merchant ship, there were 4 soldiers yawning and 7 or 8 civilian workers, including Meng Wenhao's father. Meng Wenhao's father looked at the bonfire on the island, but his heart drifted back to Chang and thousands of miles away. Under the moonlight, a few black shadows silently climbed up the ship's ladder and quietly climbed onto the deck. "Pucci." The 4 black shadows raised their swords at the same time, and the 4 soldiers on the ship immediately fell to the ground. The leader made a gesture, and they approached the other side of the deck. Chapter 716. 5 steps for steps, 3 steps. In the blink of an eye, the black figure was only 3 steps away from Father Meng. Achoo! The sea breeze at night was quite cold. Father Meng couldn't help but sneeze. He turned around instinctively and saw the black figure holding a scimitar behind him. Enemy attack. Someone is trying to steal the ship. Father Meng's eyes widened, and he roared at the top of his lungs without a second thought. "Father Meng! Baka! Damn it!" The man in black was the pirate leader this time, Nakamura Kawayu. He cursed and swung his scimitar at Father Meng's head. Woo woo woo. At the same time, the ships nearby noticed the commotion. The soldiers on the ships blew their horns, and the silent night suddenly became noisy. Clang! In the face of a life-and-death crisis, Father Meng's strong desire to survive made his body burst forth with great potential. With a roll, he actually dodged the pirate leader's sure-kill attack. Yuliang, be careful. I'm here to help you. Two crew members in the cabin heard the commotion and immediately ran out and shouted, Baka, kill all of them, set this ship on fire, and then drive into their main fleet. Nakamura Kawayu's eyes were red as he shouted, Hi! At this time, more than a dozen black figures came up from the water. Some of them raised the anchor and pulled the sails, some set the ship on fire, and others swung their scimitars at the crew. The pirates on the other ships were doing the same thing. Woo-woo-woo. Ship after ship, like a relay race, the bleak sound of the horn finally reached the island. Wudi, what happened? Li Xiaogong, who was resting against the stone wall in the cave, immediately stood up and shouted outside, reporting, Your Highness, the rear of the fleet is under attack. They seem to be pirates, and we don't know how many of them there are. They sneaked onto our ship and tried to kill us. After they were exposed, they tried to set the fleet on fire. Our brothers have gone to help. A young soldier ran into the cave and reported loudly. Li Xiaogong's expression suddenly changed. He bellowed, Preposterous! Which scoundrel dares to provoke the tiger's whiskers of great Tang? Come with me and catch them all in one fell swoop. Understood. Sai, Your Highness, do you need the help of our Jinla Kingdom's warriors? Our Piao country's warriors are also at your disposal. Funan country is willing to lend a hand to Your Highness. At this moment, the envoys in the cave all stood up and said, In truth, they had long ago witnessed the power of the Tang fleet, and they had hoped to run into a few pirates so that they could show off in front of Li Xiaogong. But this fleet was simply too large, let alone pirates. Even many countries had not dared to provoke this fleet. Now that they had finally run into pirates, these emissaries were not afraid. On the contrary, they were all excited, because they could finally show off and win Li Xiaogong's favor. There was no doubt that the great Tang Navy at this time was just this powerful. Compared to the Han Dynasty, the maritime Silk Road during the Sui and Tang dynasties was obviously more developed. Of course, there was an interesting phenomenon from the historical materials at this time. The Sui and Tang dynasties did not attach as much importance to the sea as the Song dynasty. The reason was that the Tang dynasty was very powerful at that time. Its western border had reached Central Asia and West Asia. Its Silk Road was very smooth on land. The maritime Silk Road was relatively less important, but its naval power was still very strong. The Tang dynasty dominated the entire East Asia at that time. Of course, there were other maritime powers in East Asia, such as Japan. According to the historical records, the Tang dynasty won a series of naval battles at Baichuan River. Later, Japanese scholars researched this matter. They believed that the reason for Japan's defeat at that time was that China's shipbuilding technology was far ahead of other Asian countries. At that time, China's ships were sewn with rosin, and the number of iron nails were far more than Japan's. When the ships of the two sides collided in the naval battle, the Japanese ships fell apart, while the Tang dynasty ships were sturdy and did not fall apart. Therefore, the Tang dynasty had an advantage in naval battles. Therefore, the Tang dynasty was worthy of being the overlord of the sea in Asia and monopolize the trade of the entire region. Therefore, Li Zishuan, who had transmigrated, was not in a hurry to build more advanced ships because there was no need for it. At this moment, after hearing the request of the envoys, Li Xiaogong flicked his sleeves and said, Envoys, please take a seat here. There's no need to trouble you with mere thieves. After saying that, he led the soldiers out of the cave. What's going on? Yuliang, who are they? On the big ship at the back of the fleet, an old man who was sleeping in the cabin walked out when he heard the commotion. When he saw the two sides fighting on the deck, he was stunned. Boss phone. Run. They're pirates. Father Meng's back was slashed by a knife. When he saw the old man in luxurious clothes, he immediately shouted. It turned out that this old man was Father Meng's boss, the rich businessman in Chang and Feng Jihua. Pirates? Feng Jihua's eyes were filled with horror. Then he shouted, Yuliang, hang in there. The prince and the others will be here soon. Baka, kill them all. Set them on fire. Nakamura, you did not understand what Feng Jihua and Meng Yuliang were talking about. When he saw many ships approaching, he shouted anxiously. At this point, it was obvious that the plan to steal the ships would not succeed. However, he wanted to set the fleet on fire to take revenge on the Tang people. Hi. Several silhouettes rushed into the cabin and soon took out oil lamps. Boom! The deck was set ablaze, and then one of the silhouettes took control of the sails, allowing the fire ship to crash into the Tang fleet. At the same time, the battle on Father Meng's side was about to end. At this moment, there were more than 10 knife wounds on his body. The other crew members had all collapsed, and he was the only one left struggling to hold on. Go to hell. Nakamura, you did not expect the person in front of him to be so tenacious. However, no matter how tenacious a person was, he was destined to not be able to withstand his sharp knife. With a roar, he charged toward Father Meng with his knife. Yuliang. Feng Jihua saw it clearly and could not help but cry out in grief. Father Meng looked at the cold light that was flying toward him. He knew that he could not escape this time. At this moment, he thought of his wife, daughter, and son, as well as this cargo ship that carried the hope of his entire family. 2 streams of tears rolled down from the corners of his eyes. Chapter 717. Die. Nakamakawa, you saw the despair and sorrow on Father Meng's face from midair, and a bloodthirsty thrill rose in his heart. This person in front of him had ruined his plans, and now he could finally cut him in half. At this moment, the dark clouds in the sky were blown away by the wind, and the moon revealed its beautiful face. The bright moonlight poured down, and the sword in Nakamakawa Yu's hand reflected a beam of light. It shone on Father Meng's face, making his face look extremely pale. Yuliang. Feng Jihua's heart was filled with grief. He knew a little about Meng Yuliang's family background, and now the pillar of this family of 4 was going to die on his ship. This made him feel extremely guilty. Farewell. How are ya, Yulan? Meng Yuliang painfully thought as he felt the wind from the sword on his forehead. He didn't want to die, but he tried his best. Humph. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment of life and death, a cold snort sounded in the night without warning. 3 arrows suddenly shot from the side of the ship. The arrows were like flowing lights, and the intense friction between the arrowhead and the air made 3 explosive sounds. Upon closer inspection, the bodies of these 3 arrows were actually made of fine iron. Clang, clang, clang. The 3 iron arrows were like meteors, carrying a huge amount of energy, and shot on the blade of Nakamakawa Yu's sword one after another. The sword that was originally moving forward was suddenly stopped in midair by these 3 arrows, and a series of clanging sounds were heard, and each sound was louder than the last. Nakamakawa Yu was suddenly hit by a huge force, and he couldn't help but slow down. When the 3rd arrow hit the blade, he could no longer control his body, and his whole body was directly shaken and sent flying. Nakamakawa Yu knelt on the deck with one knee. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like a crazy demon. Suddenly, he felt his chi and blood surging, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. 3 arrows, just 3 arrows, and they were only on the blade. The impact from the sword alone was enough to make him spit out blood. The power of these 3 arrows was obvious. Master. Nakamakawa Yu instantly understood that he had met a master that he had never met in his life. Without hesitation, he turned around and jumped into the sea. Retreat. Before he fell into the water, he remembered the rest of the people on the ship, so he shouted loudly. Oomph. You want to run? Whoosh. A bone-chilling voice came from the night sky, followed by another sharp arrow, aiming straight for Nakakawa Yudo's back. Pfft. Ah! This was the sound of an arrow piercing into flesh, followed by Nakamura Yu's miserable cry. From a moment he raised his blade to kill Meng Yuliang to the moment he was hit by the arrow and fell into the water, it took less than 10 breaths of time. At this moment, hearing his screams, the rest of the pirates on the ship immediately reacted and were scared out of their wits. Hurry up and run. Boss is injured, and the Tang Empire's army is chasing us. Don't kill me." The pirates on the deck immediately fled in all directions. They wanted to jump into the sea to escape, but they heard the voice of the person from before coming from the side of the ship. "Huh, these bastards still want to run? Release the arrows. Leave no one alive. Look carefully and shoot. Don't accidentally hurt the people on the boat." "Yes, I'm a master." There were dozens of people shouting in unison, and they were actually speaking Chinese. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Following that, arrows rained down on the pirates on the ship. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 pirates fell one after another. Lying on the deck, Meng Yuliang finally had the time to turn over and look in the direction of the sound just now. He saw that there were actually more than 10 ships about 50 steps away from the merchant ship. The leading ship was only slightly smaller than the merchant ship he was on. He saw dozens of strong men standing on it. The leader was a burly man close to 7 feet tall, with a face full of beard. As for his appearance, Meng Yuliang couldn't see it clearly because he was too far away. This isn't the Imperial Court's army. Meng Yuliang was shocked because he saw that these people were wearing tattered clothes and looked even more like bandits than the group of people just now. Meng Yuliang, who had just escaped from the tiger's den, felt as though he had fallen into the wolf's den at this moment. However, the other ships were already approaching. Before this group of bandits next to him arrived, the Imperial Court's army should also be able to arrive. This is bad. This is bad. Meng Yuliang suddenly caught a glimpse of the blazing fire on the ship. He used all his strength to prop up his body and shouted at Feng Zhihua, who was beside him in a daze, "Boss Feng, quick! Quick! Quickly help me change the course. We can't let this fire ship crash into the fleet." After saying that, he gritted his teeth, stood up, and then staggered toward the sails of the merchant ship. The sails that used to be effortless now required him to pull with all his strength. Because he used too much strength, the wound on his back instantly split open, and his already bright red undershirt was now bleeding. "Yuliang, hold on. This old man will help you control the rudder." At this moment, Feng Zhihua had already recovered from his shock. He saw that Father Meng was covered in blood, but he was still controlling the sails. He hurriedly bypassed the fire and rushed to the rudder. After all, the sails only provided the ship with power and controlled the sailing ship's speed. The rudder determined the direction of the merchant ship. This required at least 2 people to cooperate with each other to make this fire ship turn around and leave the main fleet as soon as possible. "Prince, it's not good. The merchant ship in front is on fire, and it's rushing here at full speed." Li Xiaogong took a dozen of his personal guards to a large ship at the back of the fleet in a small boat. After a while, he heard the soldiers on the mass observation deck anxiously shouting. Li Xiaogong was shocked. He hurriedly went to the stern of the ship and saw a burning merchant ship about 100 feet in front of him. "Prince, this subordinate will escort you to retreat." The general next to him was shocked and quickly bowed with cupped fists. It was only a distance of 100 feet. There was no time to raise the anchor and turn around. Not to mention that they had nowhere to turn because there were endless ships of all sizes behind them. If it weren't for this reason, Li Xiaogong wouldn't have come here in a small boat. Retreat? Retreat to where? If this prince retreats, what will happen to this large fleet? During the 3 kingdoms, Zhuge Liang burned many camps. Today, a few petty thieves want to imitate Zhuge Liang. This prince will not be like Cao Cao. Come, order the ships at the back to turn around and form a line to block the fire ship. Li Xiaogong ordered with a pale face. "Prince, you can't," the young general shouted. "Bastard, this is a military order. You dare to disobey?" Li Xiaogong said coldly as he pulled out the long sword at his waist and placed it on the general's neck. "Report, Prince, there are survivors on the merchant ship in front. They seem to be the crew on the ship. They are turning the ship around, and the fire ship has begun to deviate from the course. And there are more than a dozen sailboats beside them. They are not our people." Chapter 718. At this critical moment, Li Xiaogong had never thought of running away, nor could he run. 20,000 soldiers, tens of thousands of civilians, and several thousand ships. If such a massive force was burned down by a small band of pirates, Li Shaogong would forever be nailed to the great Tang's pillar of shame, and his descendants would never be able to rise again. The first reaction of Li Shaogong, who was quite experienced in battle, was to turn the merchant ships at the back 90 degrees and form a line to form a strong defense. Then, he ordered the other fleets to move away and increase the distance between them. At the cost of sacrificing a few merchant ships, the survival of the entire fleet could be achieved. But this would also put Li Shaogong in danger, because the merchant ship he was standing on was in the back row. Just when Li Shaogong was preparing to make a decisive decision, a messenger came down from the observation deck and ran up to Li Shaogong to report. Li Shaogong was taken aback. He looked at the deputy general with a sword at his neck and asked, "Whose ship does that merchant ship belong to?" The young general clasped his fist and said, "Your Highness, that ship belongs to the wealthy merchant of the capital, Feng Zhihua. The ships next to it also belong to him." "Feng Zhihua," Li Shaogong softly muttered, and then his expression flickered as he asked, "Is the Meng Yuliang that this king asked you to keep an eye on that ship?" "Your Highness, he is indeed on that ship." Li Shaogong's brow furrowed. At this time, he saw that the fire ship had already begun to turn to the right. At this rate, it would definitely not be able to hit the main fleet. So he decisively ordered, "Immediately turn the ship around and sail to our right to rescue the crew." "Yes, Your Highness." A few moments later, Li Shaogong's ship had raised its anchor and was making straight for Feng Zhihua's merchant ship. The distance between them was less than 1,000 feet, and the merchant ship was also turning, so its straight-line speed was greatly reduced. Thus, Li Shaogong's ship was able to quickly catch up. At this time, the fire on the merchant ship was about to spread to the mast and rudder. "Hurry and have the people on the ship jump in. Find a few soldiers who are good at swimming to save them." At this moment, the two ships were moving side by side, and the distance between them was only about 30 to 40 feet. Li Shaogong squinted his eyes and saw that the bloody man controlling the sails was Meng Yuliang. He let out a sigh of relief in his heart and hurriedly ordered. This time, Li Zishuan had helped a lot. Only those who had drifted on the sea would know the dangers of the sea. Previously, Li Zishuan had made a lot of preparations for the fleet to go south. Compasses, sea charts, and navigation precautions had saved many lives. Of course, Li Shaogong was very grateful. Before he left, Li Zishuan had personally asked him to take good care of Meng Wenhao's father, Meng Yuliang. Although he was suspected of abusing his position for personal gain, Li Shaogong was really willing to do so. If Meng Yuliang really died tonight, then he, Li Shaogong, would owe him an even bigger favor. "Yes, Your Highness." A soldier immediately cupped his fist and accepted the order. Then, the soldiers on the ship shouted in unison, "Listen to the crew on the other side. His Highness orders you to quickly jump off the ship. We will save you." Listen to the crew on the other side. "His Highness orders you to quickly jump off the ship. We will save you." Feng Zhihua and Meng Yuliang, who were completely focused on controlling the ship, were overjoyed when they heard the commotion. "Yuliang, those are His Highness men, and His Highness is also here. His Highness has personally brought people to save us. We're saved," Feng Zhihua said with tears streaming down his face. From the moment he had turned the ship around, he had never thought that he would survive. He believed that he would be buried in the sea like this merchant ship, but he had no regrets. He did not wish for his ship to destroy the entire fleet, because he was a man of the great Tang. A Tang citizen could not harm another Tang citizen, not even in death. Now that he saw Li Shaogong personally coming to rescue him as a prince, this kind of surprise made Feng Zhihua's heart surge, and he was indescribably excited. "Qila, that's right. We're saved. Boss Feng, you don't know how to swim. Grab this shirt, and I'll jump into the sea with you." The angle of the sail had already been set to the maximum, so there was no need for anyone to control it. After a period of rest, Meng Yuliang had already recovered a little of his strength. He took off his blood-stained clothes, and with a ripping sound, tore it into a long strip of cloth. After tying the two pieces together, he walked over and handed it to Feng Zhihua. Feng Zhihua said worriedly. But Yuliang, you've suffered such serious injuries. How can this old man have the face to drag you down? You go by yourself. This old man. Meng Yuliang did not say anything and directly tied one end of the cloth to Feng Zhihua's arm. He said with difficulty, Boss Feng, before you left, you gave my family a large sum of money and gave my family's children and wife a good life. As long as I'm still alive, I will definitely bring you out of here alive. Jump quickly. If you don't jump, the fire will reach us. Feng Zhihua hurriedly tore off the cloth and said, No. Yuliang, if you bring this old man along, I'll only be a burden to you. When Father Meng saw that the mast was about to topple over due to the fire, he immediately grabbed Feng Zhihua and jumped into the sea. Of course, he jumped in the direction of Li Shaogong and the others. Above the sea, there was a heart-wrenching scream. One must know that Father Meng had been slashed more than a dozen times, and many of the wounds were so deep that the bones could be seen. Now that he was soaked in seawater, there was a burning pain in his wounds. This was really sprinkling salt on his wounds. The pain was more than 100 times more intense than when he was slashed just now. Even a tough man like Meng Yuliang could not help but cry out in pain. Hurry, swim over to save them. They can't hold on for much longer. When Li Shaogong heard this heart-wrenching scream, he immediately leaned against the side of the ship and shouted at the soldiers in the water. What a good man who values friendship and righteousness. I, Zhang Zhongjian, will lend you a hand. At this moment, a burly man flew onto the fire ship from nowhere. Then, he borrowed the force of the ship and came to where Father Meng was. He lifted the two of them with one hand and flew toward the ship where Li Shaogong was. The moment Father Meng jumped into the sea, 1,000 miles away, in student dormitory 007 of Yanwang College. Meng Wenhao, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly sat up, clutched his chest, and let out a scream. The other students in the dormitory were instantly awakened. Wenhao, what's wrong with you? Wang Meng was about to curse at someone for disturbing his sleep when he suddenly felt that something was wrong with Meng Wenhao's voice. Hence, he quickly got up and ran over to ask. Blood was thicker than water. Father and son were connected by heart. Even thousands of miles away could not separate them from each other. Chapter 719. Protect His Highness. Under the moonlight, the burly man was like a great rock spreading its wings, carrying Meng Yuliang and Feng Zhihua, the two chicks, and aggressively flying towards the big ship Li Shaogong was on. The soldiers on the ship were shocked and quickly raised their sabers to protect Li Shaogong. Get out of the way! Li Shaogong pushed aside the soldiers in front of him with one hand. After the burly man landed on the ship, he ordered, Men, send them back to the island for treatment first. Wu Di, take some men to see if there are any survivors on the other ships. Also, find out where these pirates came from. At this moment, Meng Yuliang's face was even paler than a sheet of paper. His facial features were all scrunched up in pain. Feng Zhihua's condition was not much better. At this moment, he was bent over and vomiting. It was obvious that he had been forced to drink a lot of seawater. Yes, His Highness. Wu Di, the head of the guards, looked at the burly man and cupped his fists. Meng Yuliang thanks His Highness. Thank you, benefactor. Just as the soldiers were about to carry them away, Meng Yuliang propped himself up with difficulty and kowtowed to Li Shaogong and the burly man. He had just recognized this burly man as the one who had shot the arrow and saved him. The funny thing was that he had thought that the burly man and the others were another group of pirates. No need to be so polite. Quickly go and treat your injuries. Li Shaogong smiled faintly and waved his hand. You're called Meng Yuliang? You're a real man. You don't need to thank me. It was only a small matter for me to save you. Quickly go and treat your injuries. The burly man laughed heartily without a care in the world. There were soldiers who carried them to the other ships and sailed towards the island. Zhang Zhongjian? You are Zhang Zhongjian? After Meng Yuliang and Feng Zhihua were carried away, Li Shaogong asked with narrowed eyes. As a member of the military, He had naturally heard of Zhang Zhongjian's name, but he had never seen him in person. "Haha, I am Zhang Zhongjian. Your Highness does not know this one, but this one knows your Highness." Yes, this robust man was Zhang Zhongjian, and his nickname was the Bearded Guest. Together with Li Jing and Hong Funu, they were called the Feng Chun Three Heroes. He was originally the son of Zhang Jiling, the richest man in Yangzhou. When he was born, his father despised him for being ugly and wanted to kill him. He was rescued and became a Kunlun slave. After he succeeded, he wanted to raise an army to conquer the world. When he saw Li Shimin, he was ashamed that his bearing was not as good as Li Shimin's. He firmly believed that the world would belong to Li Shimin. He was interested in Hong Fu. After knowing that Hong Fu had married Li Jing, the three of them became brother and sister. He gave all of his family's property to Li Jing and his wife to help Li Shimin unify the world. He left quietly and later became the ruler of the 72 islands in the Great Tang Southeast Sea. The Bearded Guest's ending was not a tragedy. It was said that he personally led an army of 100,000 into the country of Fuyu, killed its master, and proclaimed himself king. The rest of his life was carefree and happy. Later generations believed that the country of Bio was located thousands of miles southeast of our country. To a large extent, it was either the Philippines or Thailand. "Brother Zhongjian, why are you here so late at night?" Hearing Zhang Zhongjian's admission, Li Xiaogong's face flashed with a hint of seriousness. The Bearded Guest's small display of skill was enough to prove that his skill should be above the peak of the Zhongshe realm. It was very likely that he had already touched the threshold of the Great Grandmaster realm. "Why? Is your Highness suspecting that I have ulterior motives? If I say that I came here by coincidence, would your Highness believe me?" Faced with Li Xiaogong's interrogation, the Bearded Guest was not afraid at all. He was the king of this sea region. There was no one here that could make him afraid. Li Xiaogong suddenly smiled and said, "This prince was just casually asking. Since Zhongjian said that you came here by coincidence, then why should this prince believe you?" The Bearded Guest looked deeply at Li Xiaogong and then laughed heartily. "Ha! Your Highness is also a straightforward person. I have something to ask your Highness. Is it convenient for you to do so? Please speak." The Bearded Guest thought for a moment before saying, "Are Medicine Master and Hong Fu doing well?" Hearing this, Li Xiaogong smiled and said, "They are doing well. Medicine Master is now the Minister of War and is highly regarded by His Majesty. How could he not be doing well? As for Hong Fu, if Medicine Master is doing well, she will definitely be doing well too. It's just that this prince heard that they have been inquiring about you, Zhongjian. If they knew that you were here, Medicine Master and Hong Fu would definitely put aside their work and rush over to see you." Actually, disregarding everything else, Li Xiaogong and Li Jing's personal relationship had always been very good. Later generations said that Li Xiaogong's title as the second meritorious official in the Lingyan Pavilion was undeserved because all of his achievements were won by Li Jing. Li Xiaogong had experienced many great battles, such as eliminating Xiao Xian and capturing Fu Gongfeng. He was the commander, while Li Jing was the subordinate. Let's not comment on the truth first. However, Li Jing was willing to be a supporting character at that time, which showed that their relationship was very good. Those who said that Li Xiaogong stole Li Jing's achievements were even more excessive. Looking at the Jingguan dynasty, Li Xiaogong was a humble person. He did not take credit for himself, did not do anything, and did not seize power. In the imperial family, his character was one of the best. How could he steal a subordinate's achievements? Thus, Li Xiaogong had a very clear understanding of Li Jing's family situation. A hint of warmth flashed across the bearded man's boorish appearance. A moment later, he shook his head and sighed. "I'll have to trouble your Highness to inform Medicine Master and Hong Fu that they don't need to look for me anymore. When the time comes, they will naturally meet again. Now that the world is at peace, as long as they live their own lives, I, as their big brother, will be satisfied." "Zhongjian, why do you have to do this?" Li Xiaogong couldn't help but want to persuade him, but the bearded man interrupted him. "Your Highness, there's no need to persuade me. This one has already made up my mind. This vast sea is where I, Zhang Zhongjian, should go. Roaming the four seas and being free and unfettered is this Zhang's lifelong wish. Li Xiaogong pursed his lips and did not speak. At this moment, the leader of the personal guards, Wu Di, came up to the deck and bowed, reporting, "Your Highness, the crew of Feng Jihua's other merchant ships are all dead. Not only that, we also lost 28 brothers, all of them killed with a single strike." The air on the deck suddenly froze. Li Xiaogong's face was ashen as he asked, "Did you find out where these bandits came from?" Wu Di waved his hand. "Bring them up." A group of guards carried 5 corpses over. Wu Di bowed and said, "Your Highness, based on the hair ornaments, clothing, and weapons of these pirates, this subordinate speculates that they're probably from Wa? Bastards. A tiny country dares to provoke the tiger's whiskers of my great Tang?" Li Xiaogong's eyes widened, his eyebrows stood up, and veins bulged on his face as he furiously roared. The bearded man interjected, "Your Highness, according to this one's knowledge, these people are just pirates roaming the seas. Given the current strength of Wa, they would never dare to provoke the great Tang. The leader of these pirates is called Nakamakawa Yu, and he has some reputation in these waters. This one has always wanted to get rid of him, and when I received the news the day before yesterday, I followed him here. I didn't expect to run into your Highness." Chapter 720. The neon mentioned by the bearded man was the name for neon before the Tang Dynasty. During the Eastern Han Dynasty, more than 100 small countries were established on the island of Neon. One of them sent envoys to the Han Dynasty. Because the envoys were short, thin, and small, Emperor Guangwu of the Eastern Han Dynasty, Lu Xiu, granted them the name Neon, which was a vassal state of China. Therefore, the people were also called Neon, and the emperor was named the king of Neon. Since then, the Han people called Neon the slave state of Neon, and the Neon people were called Neon until the 3 kingdoms, the 2 Jin dynasties, and the northern and southern dynasties. During the Sui dynasty, Crown Prince Shengde of Neon wrote in his letter to Emperor Yang of Sui, "The Crown Prince of the rising sun to the Crown Prince of the setting sun." This was the prototype of Neon's name. It was not until the first year of Xianheng of the Tang Dynasty, 670, that Neon sent the Tang Dynasty to change the name to Neon, which meant the place where the sun rises. In addition, in Chinese, Fusang and Dongying were also alternative names for Neon. On the big ship, after Li Xiaogong heard the bearded man's words, his face was gloomy, whether it was the Neon court's intention or not. Since those bandits came from Neon, the Neon King should give me an explanation and give an explanation to the 28 soldiers who sacrificed themselves. A blood debt must be paid with blood. The last 6 words were squeezed out from Li Xiaogong's teeth, which was particularly horrifying. He lost nearly 30 soldiers inexplicably, so he couldn't help but be angry, not to mention that the bandits came from a low-level country like Neon. Yes, that's right. Neon was now a low-level country in Li Xiaogong's eyes. It was even inferior to small countries like Zhenla and Piao, so it was even more impossible for him to call the ruler of Neon Emperor. In fact, the term emperor was first proposed by Crown Prince Shengde. In a letter he sent to Emperor Yang of Sui, he wrote, "The East Emperor respects the West Emperor." At that time, it was because of this sentence that completely angered Emperor Yang of Sui, which led to the break of diplomatic relations between the 2 countries. The Celestial Empire was not called for nothing in ancient times. At that time, people would not recognize the so-called emperor, and China called the Emperor of Japan Emperor Neon Emperor around the end of the Qing Dynasty. "Prince, are you planning to go to Neon?" The bearded man's eyes lit up as he asked meaningfully. Li Xiaogong replied in a deep voice, "The king of a nation failed to educate his people properly and caused damage to our fleet. Of course, he should be held accountable. However, the most important thing right now is to find those bandits and cut them into pieces to comfort the souls of the soldiers who died in the battle." "Zhongjian, do you know where the nest of those bandits is? Can you take me there?" The bearded man shook his head and replied, "If I knew, I would have brought people to destroy them long ago. I can't stand those wretched Japanese people. Li Xiaogong sighed helplessly. Wu Di, present. I order you to lead 20 warships and 400 soldiers to search for the whereabouts of those bandits. Regardless of whether you find them or not, you have to gather back here before dawn. Li Xiaogong ordered solemnly. Understood. Wu Di replied loudly. The bearded man suddenly said, Your Highness, forgive this one for speaking out of turn, but it's very easy to get lost at night. The people this little brother is leading might not be able to return tomorrow morning. Li Xiaogong waved his hand and had Wu Di make the arrangements. Then he confidently smiled at the bearded man and said, Zhong Jian, there's no need to worry. Every ship is equipped with a compass and a sea chart. They won't get lost. The bearded man was taken aback. Then he asked curiously, If I may ask, Your Highness, what is a compass? Can I take a look at it? Li Xiaogong smiled and whispered to the guard beside him. Then he said, Why can't I do that? It's not convenient to talk here. Why don't we go to the camp on the island first? The bearded man laughed and said in a genteel manner, Of course, I wouldn't dare ask. Then he waved his hand to the small ship next to him and said, Set up camp on the island ahead. Behave yourselves and don't cause any trouble. Do you hear me? He had acted like a modest gentleman earlier, but in the blink of an eye, he had reverted to his pirate nature. Li Xiaogong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This is a compass? In a cave, the bearded man pointed at the small round box that wasn't even 1/3 the size of his palm. Li Xiaogong glanced at the envoys who were staring at the compass in his hand. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, he handed the compass to the bearded man and smiled. That's right. This is a compass. No matter where you are, the red end of this needle will always point to the north, and the white end will always point to the south. With this, you won't have to worry about getting lost. The bearded man held the compass in his hand as if he had found a treasure. He found it hard to believe that such a small thing could have such a magical function. What was funny was that he actually held the compass and even spun it around twice on the spot. A 7-foot-tall man with a curly beard was spinning in circles on the spot like a little child. This scene was simply too beautiful. Too miraculous. Unbelievable. Your Highness, where did you buy this compass? It's simply a godly nautical artifact. After a while, the bearded man looked at Li Xiaogong and said excitedly. As for the compass in his hand, he was really reluctant to return it. No one knew the importance of a compass better than him, the pirate king who had been drifting on the sea for many years. If the person in front of him wasn't Li Xiaogong, he would probably even have the thought of killing him and robbing him. He had never been a righteous gentleman. He was only loyal to his brothers. Li Xiaogong found it funny and said, This is something produced by the Strange Taste Pavilion in Chang'an. Zhong Jian, the crew member you saved, just now happened to be someone the shopkeeper of the Strange Taste Pavilion asked me to take care of. Strange Taste Pavilion. The bearded man secretly remembered these 3 words in his heart, and then asked curiously, Who is the shopkeeper of the Strange Taste Pavilion? He can actually speak in front of your Highness? He was not surprised. Apart from Li Shimin and Li Yuan, Li Xiaogong was definitely the person with the highest prestige in the Tang Empire and was respected by many people. Li Xiaogong said, The shopkeeper of the Strange Taste Pavilion is called Li Zishuan. He has an identity. I think you will be interested, Zhong Jian. He is the last disciple of spiritual master Ling Su. This compass was invented by him alone. Spiritual master Ling Su? This time, the bearded man was even more surprised than before. He murmured, Hey, it seems that I was right to save someone just now. I actually got involved with spiritual master Ling Su's disciple. At this time, Li Xiaogong took out a roll of paper from his sleeve and said with a smile, This time, the Imperial Army escorted the merchant ships to the south for trade. In addition to providing a compass, Li Zishuan also gave me a detailed sea map. It was because of this that the army could return so quickly. The bearded man's eyes lit up and said, Can I take a look at it? Of course. The bearded man took it and slowly opened the map. What he didn't expect was that when he opened it, It opened up a new world for him. Chapter 721. What kind of map is this? The Strait of Malacca, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Red Sea? Why have I never heard of them before? The bearded man looked at the map Li Shaogong gave him and couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Li Shaogong pointed at the map and said, "Those places are quite far from where we are now. Zhongjian, look here. This is where we are now. Neon is northeast of us. If Wu Di and the others can't find those pirates tonight, we will go straight to Neon from here tomorrow morning." Only then did the bearded man find a way to look at the map. He carefully looked at every sea area and every island on the map. He had been to some of these places before. After a long while, his expression became a little greedy. He smacked his lips and said, "That's right. That's right." He smacked his lips and said, "This map is too detailed. And I only found out today that there are so many countries and islands in this world." Li Shaogong smiled and didn't say anything. Then, he took the sea map back from the bearded guest. The bearded guest was very reluctant to part with it. He thought in his heart, "If I have this sea map and a compass, where can I, Zhongjian, go in this big world?" Thinking of this, he asked tentatively, "Your Highness, I wonder if you can give me a copy of this map?" As for the compass, he thought that since it was sold in the Strange Taste Pavilion in Chang, and he would take the time to buy a batch, it was better to owe less favors. Li Shaogong looked at the bearded man meaningfully and said, "Ha, it's not that I'm stingy, but there's only one copy of this map. The maps in the hands of the other soldiers only cover the Southeast Sea. The complete map is too important, and I can't make the decision alone." "Oh, I was too reckless." The bearded man cupped his hands and said. Li Shaogong shook his head and said, "If Zhongjian really wants the complete map, why don't you go to Chang and find Li Zishuan? This map was drawn by him, so he can give it to you." Clang, 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 clang. The next day, at 5:30 in the morning, when all the students were still asleep, Yin Huang College's wake-up call sounded, causing a wave of screams. F***, are you kidding me? The sun hadn't even risen yet, and they were already asking him to wake up? "Do you still want me to live?" "Yeah, you didn't let me sleep last night, and now you want me to wake up early in the morning. Can't you let me sleep a little longer?" F***. It's rare for this prince to sleep so deeply, but now I have to wake up so early. Little Xian is too deceitful. In dormitory 001, Li Tai turned over, causing the bed to shake. Li Changxian, who was sleeping on the upper bunk, couldn't help but feel a little scared. "All right, Qingke, stop complaining. Get up quickly." According to Xiao Xian's temperament, if anyone woke up late, they might be punished again. Sigh. Li Tai let out a deep sigh and sat up. Then, it was a complete tragedy. "Ouch. My legs are so sore. My waist is also very sore. No. I can't get up. I really can't get up." After a tiring day yesterday, he basically fell asleep as soon as he laid on the bed. Although there was an emergency gathering in the middle, last night was still the best night of sleep he had in so many years. However, the second day after the intense exercise, it was a complete tragedy. The little fatty felt that every part of his body was sore, and he couldn't move at all, let alone get out of bed and gather. "Qingke, what's wrong with you?" "Sigh. My legs are also sore." Li Changxian was just about to get out of bed to find out what was going on when he suddenly felt that his legs were also extremely sore, and he couldn't help but wail. "Huh, your bodies can't take it anymore. Look at me, old Chung. I'm perfectly fine." Chung Chumo saw the situation and laughed gloatingly. "Get lost." Li Tai was furious. He couldn't wait to go over and fight Chung Chumo to the death. On the other side, in dormitory 007, "Wenhao, how are you? Does your heart still hurt?" Wang Ming got out of bed and put on his clothes as he looked at Ming, Wenhao's bed, and asked. Ming Wenhao waved his hand with a pale face and said with a forced smile, "Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine now." A hint of gloominess flashed across his eyes. Iron Egg suggested, "Wenhao, why don't I help you apply for a day off? You don't look too good, so don't force yourself." Meng Wenhao quickly shook his head and said, No, I'm really fine now. Let's quickly wash up and gather. Don't delay you guys because of me, Wang Ming said unhappily. What are you saying, Wenhao? Even if we're late, we can't leave you alone. The rest of the people in the dormitory nodded in agreement. Yes, that's right. Since we're in the same dormitory, we should take care of each other. Yes, we can't leave anyone behind. Meng Wenhao's heart warmed. He paused for a moment and said solemnly, It's my fault, but I'm really fine now. Let's quickly get ready to gather outside. Iron Egg smiled and said, That's fine. But Wenhao, if you can't take it, you have to say so anytime. Gather, gather. Class as a unit. Run 5 laps around the sports field. You can only have breakfast after you're done. 3:45, 6 in the morning. All the students gathered outside the dormitory building. Qin Xiong was personally commanding. He looked at the 16 classes lined up neatly and shouted loudly. These were the morning running tasks that Li Zixuan had arranged long ago. As time passed, the distance would gradually increase. Not only the morning running, but the other training activities in the military training would also increase in the future. The students were all dumbfounded. 5 laps? That's a total of 3 to 4 miles? How can we finish running? My legs are still hurting. My legs hurt too. They're sore. Yes. Me too. Seeing the students in a mess, Qin Xiong couldn't help but shout loudly, Quiet! If anyone can't run 5 laps, you won't be able to eat in the morning. If anyone falls behind in any class, everyone in the class will have to accompany them. Once he said that, everyone fell silent. They knew that Qin Xiong was serious this time. Instructors of each class, bring the students to the sports field to run now. After all the students were quiet, Qin Xiong ordered. Yes, Chief Instructor. Students of Class 1, listen to the command. Attention. Look forward. Start running. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Bang, 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 bang. The students left the dormitory building one by one in an uneven pace. Qin Xiong stood at the back and thought to himself, I'll only increase your exercise volume for now. I'll ask you to keep your steps orderly in the future. Chapter 722. Beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep, beep. Beep, 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 beep. Bamboo whistles sounded one after another on the academy sports field. At first, the instructor shouted 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Later, when they saw that the students were used to the rhythm, they took out the bamboo whistles that Li Zixuan gave them and blew them. The effect was no different from shouting the slogans. This made Pang Feiji and the other instructors breathe a sigh of relief. Blowing a bamboo whistle was much more relaxing than shouting at the top of their lungs. Huff, huff, huff. After running a lap, Li Tai started to pant heavily. Yesterday, when he was standing in the military posture, he could play some tricks and slack off. But now, when he was running laps, he had no way to slack off. Moreover, because of the cotton padding in his shoes, running became a burden. What was worse was that his whole body was sore today. He was too lazy to even move his fingers. Running was simply killing him. Now, with every step he took, he was enduring immense pain. On the second lap, Li Tai gritted his teeth and barely managed to keep up with the speed of the team. On the third lap, he had already fallen from the middle to the back of the team. Large beads of sweat dripped down his face. Huff, huff, huff. The little fatty felt that his blood was burning, and his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Chinke, how are you? There are only 2 laps left. Hang in there. Li Chengxian sensed that something was wrong with Li Tai. He deliberately fell behind the team and encouraged Li Tai as he ran. I can't. Big brother. You go first. I'll stop and rest for a while. Huff, huff. I feel like I'm going to die if I continue running. Li Tai gritted his teeth and held on for a while before he finally stopped and said helplessly. Li Chengxian panicked. He came over and pulled Li Tai and said, No, we're brothers. How can I leave you alone? You pull my clothes, I'll drag you along. Li Tai shook his head and said, Big brother, your body is not much better than mine. You won't be able to complete it even if you pull me. Don't worry about me. Run first. He can't move it by himself. What if old Cheng am included? After running for a while, Cheng Chumo realized that Li Chengxian and Li Tai had disappeared. He hurriedly ran over. And me, Chinke, I'm strong. Why don't I carry you and run? Yuchi Baolin came over and scratched his head with a silly smile. Running 5 laps was like playing house to him. It was effortless. The few of them broke out in a sweat, inwardly thinking that the Yuchi family's children were still fierce. In the end, the 3 of them grabbed a strip of cloth and pulled Li Tai along as they ran forward. The 4th round. The 5th round. Phew, I'm finally done. All right, you guys can go and eat. Gather at the sports field at 7:30 a.m. sharp. Pang Feiji did a head count and announced loudly. Of course, there was no need for Qin Xiong to personally lead the morning exercises. Phew, I'm so tired. After hearing that, Li Tai sat on the grass and said to Li Chengxian, Cheng Chumo, and the others, Big brother, Chumo, Baolin, you guys go and eat first. I'll rest for a while before going. Through this run, Li Tai felt that something was different. He felt a tinge of warmth in his heart, and he started to think for others. Then, Chinke, hurry up. Don't be late. Li Chengxian saw that Li Tai looked like he was about to collapse, so he did not try to persuade him anymore. Instead, he reminded him, Okay, I got it. Wenhao, come over here. Come to my office. Meng Wenhao left the canteen after breakfast and did not expect to bump into Li Zishuan. He saw Li Zishuan waving at him and instructing him. Yes, Yamacho. Meng Wenhao did not know why Li Zishuan was looking for him, but he saw that there was still about half an hour before the military training began, so he agreed. After a while, the 2 of them arrived at the principal's office on the 10th floor of Guanghua Building. Have a seat. Li Zishuan pointed at the sofa opposite him and smiled. Thank you, Yamacho. Meng Wenhao walked over and carefully sat down as he said, I heard that you had chest pains last night. Wenhao, are you all right? Although military training is important, don't force yourself when there's something wrong with your body. Li Zishuan smiled slightly. Meng Wenhao was stunned. After a while, he smiled bitterly and said, Iron Egg was the one who told Yamacho, right? Iron Egg was just being nice. Don't have any other thoughts. Li Zishuan could not help but say. This matter was indeed told to him by Bruiser after he finished his morning exercise. Li Zishuan still valued Meng Wenhao as a student. Moreover, symptoms like angina could be serious or minor. If it wasn't handled properly, it could be fatal. Li Zishuan had no choice but to pay attention to it. Meng Wenhao hurriedly waved his hand and said, Yamacho, you misunderstood. I know that Iron Egg was being nice, and I don't have any other thoughts. Then how are you now? Do you want me to give you 2 days off and let you go back to Chong and to see a doctor? If it were Li Tai, hearing this, he would definitely nod and even shamelessly ask Li Zishuan for a few more days off. But Meng Wenhao was not Li Tai. No, thank you, Yamacho, for your kindness. I just had chest pains last night, but it's nothing serious now. Are you really okay? Li Zishuan asked suspiciously. Meng Wenhao said with a serious face, I'm really okay. Okay then. If there's anything, you can tell me at any time. Don't force yourself. Okay. Meng Wenhao nodded and got up to leave. He hesitated for a moment and said, Yamacho, I have something to ask. I don't know if it's convenient for you to tell me. Li Zishuan said without thinking, Ask. I want to know, Yamacho, do you know the latest news of the fleet going south? Li Zishuan suddenly said, Wenhao, are you worried about your father? Meng Wenhao nodded. Li Zishuan stood up and paced 2 steps in front of the window. He said, As far as I know, half a month ago, the Imperial Court did receive news from the fleet going south. The letter said that the fleet had arrived in Junla and would return in a few days. Moreover, there were very few casualties in the fleet this time. Wenhao, you don't have to worry. It's estimated that in half a month, the prince and the others will be back. Meng Wenhao bit his lips and suddenly said, But last night, I dreamed that my father was covered in blood. I always have a bad feeling. Yamacho, do you know the latest news of the fleet? I'm very worried. Looking at Meng Wenhao, who was holding back his tears, Li Zishuan felt a little uncomfortable. At the same time, he felt a sense of foreboding in his heart. He secretly hoped that the fleet going south did not have any accidents. As the saying goes, dreams and reality are the opposite. When how? You don't have to worry too much. Recently, I will also find a way to help you inquire about the fleet going south. Although he was worried in his heart, Li Zishuan comforted him. Chapter 723. On an island in the southeastern seas, no one could have imagined that a barren land like this would house 20,000 some soldiers, and all of them were elites. Many of the smaller Nanyang kingdoms probably couldn't even gather so many well-trained soldiers, even if they worked together. Moreover, the amount of food and resources these soldiers had brought with them was astronomical. Your Highness, General Wu and the others will be back soon. Early in the morning, the red sun rose out of the sea, bathing the land in rosy light. Long snakes slithered across the ocean toward the bottom of the sea. A golden wave of snow more than 20 feet high rose up from the shore of the island. A soldier hurriedly ran towards the entrance of the cave on the island and reported in a low voice, This king will go and take a look." Li Xiaogong responded indifferently. After a short while, he walked out with majestic steps, followed by the envoys of various countries. The group went to the shore and stood on a boulder to look out. A fleet of ships had appeared on the horizon and was slowly approaching. As they got closer, they could even see the large Tang character on their sails. They were clearly allies. "Li Xiao, how are Meng Yuliang's injuries? What do the military doctors say?" Li Xiaogong asked the guard at his side when he saw that the fleet had yet to reach the shore. The guard's name was Li Xiao, and he was the vice captain of Li Xiaogong's personal guard, second only to Wu Di. He hurriedly replied, replying to General, "Meng Yuliang has more than 10 large and small knife wounds on his body. Fortunately, none of them hit his vital parts. However, he lost too much blood last night and is still in a coma. The military doctor said that his body's recovery ability is very strong. As long as he recuperates for a few days, he will be fine." Yes, the Tang Dynasty had military doctors, and not just military doctors, but also a relatively complete medical system. One of the main reasons the Tang Dynasty was able to consolidate its vast territory and long border defenses was that the prefectural armies had created the powerful Tang Empire Army. And the strength of an army was naturally inseparable from logistics and medical care. At this time, there would usually be a special inspection officer in the army who would inspect the condition of the sick and the condition of the sick and the food and shelter every day, so as to arrange medical treatment and evacuation. If a new sick or critically ill soldier was found, it must be reported to the general manager so that the doctor could patrol the camp and give the appropriate treatment. That's good. Have a military doctor use the best medicine and treat Meng Yuliang as quickly as possible. Li Xiaogong pondered for a moment before instructing. He was about to return to Chang'an. He didn't want Meng Yuliang to still be sick at that time. That would make him feel that he owed Li Zishuan a favor. "Yes, General." Li Xiao cupped his fists and replied. While the two of them were talking, the fleet was getting closer and closer. The bearded man beside them sighed and said, "This compass and nautical chart are simply divine tools for ocean voyages. If I wasn't familiar with this area, I might not have been able to find my way back if I went out at night." For some unknown reason, the bearded man didn't leave last night. Instead, he stayed with Li Xiaogong's army. Since ancient times, the government and the bandits couldn't coexist. He didn't expect that the regular army of the imperial court would one day live with a group of pirates. The picture was a bit strange. Li Xiaogong smiled and said, "Zhongjian, why don't you cooperate with the imperial court? When the time comes, not only will you have a compass and a sea map, you can also have the imperial court's newest ship. I reckon that this year His Majesty will send a few more fleets out to sea. Furthermore, with Li Zishuan around, I believe that my Tang Empire's fleet will definitely not just wander around the South China Sea. There are endless possibilities in the future." The bearded man's personal strength was definitely one of the best among the generals of the Tang Empire. Li Xiaogong had always been unconventional when it came to talents. Previously, he had even recommended many Sui or Wagong generals who had surrendered to the Tang Empire to Lier. Thus, more than half of the court officials were willing to submit to him. This was also one of the reasons why Li Xiaogong's reputation in the imperial court was so high. Furthermore, Li Xiaogong had a very accurate grasp of the human heart. Clearly, he could see that the bearded man's blood was filled with adventurous genes. Thus, he didn't promise him a high position or endless wealth. Instead, he used the vast ocean as a temptation to make the bearded man accept his olive branch. Oh, the bearded man's eyes lit up. He thought for a long time before finally shaking his head and said, "Thank you for your kind intentions, Your Highness. However, I am used to being free and unfettered. I can't stand those rules and can't stand being controlled by others, so, Zhongjian, don't be in such a hurry to come to a conclusion. His Majesty is a wise sovereign and will definitely give you the greatest freedom. His Majesty has always been the most tolerant of talents. Haven't you seen how Wei Xuanqing often bluntly admonishes His Majesty and makes him flee?" Before the bearded man could finish speaking, Li Xiaogong waved his hand and continued his bewitching speech. The bearded man fell into deep thought and remained silent. At this moment, the fleet was approaching. Wu Di boarded a small boat and walked over to Li Xiaogong. "Your Highness, this general was incompetent. After searching the surrounding waters for an entire night, I was still unable to find any trace of those pirates. Your Highness, please punish me." Li Xiaogong looked at the tired Wu Di and waved his hand. "It's not your fault. It's inconvenient to search at night, and there's also too much time between searches. It's understandable that you weren't able to find them. Take them back to the boat to rest." "Thank you, Your Highness, for your leniency." Wu Di hurriedly thanked him and then slowly left. More than 400 of them didn't sleep last night, so it was indeed time for them to rest. "Your Highness, do you want me to send a letter to our king to help you arrest these hateful pirates?" After Wu Di left, the Jinla envoy next to Li Xiaogong muttered. After listening to the translation, Li Xiaogong was about to refuse when the envoys of other countries rushed to shout, "Funan country is willing to help the Tang Empire eliminate the pirates. Piao country is also willing to help the Tang Empire. Dandan country is also willing. Liu country is also willing." Seeing how excited these people were, Li Xiaogong knew what they wanted to say, even if he didn't need someone to translate for him. He said loudly, "Thank you for your kind intentions, but this is a matter of the Tang Empire. Let's just wait for the news." After understanding Li Xiaogong's meaning, the envoys quieted down. Li Xiaogong shouted in a deep voice, "Li Xiao, this general is here. Immediately order the fleet to drop anchor and set sail. Destination, Wen Nation." Li Xiao was dumbfounded. He didn't expect Li Xiaogong to be so bold. Although a general might not obey military orders in a foreign country, Wen Nation was currently a vassal state of the Tang Empire. How could one use one's own army to attack a vassal state? If news of this got out, wouldn't the other vassal states of the Tang Empire fall into chaos? Chapter 724. Seeing Li Xiao's hesitation, Li Xiaogong immediately shot him a cold look. Li Xiao hurriedly replied, "Understood. Your Highness, you can't. Just as Li Xiao turned around and was about to pass on the order, a sharp voice came from the side. A eunuch in light red clothes ran over. He was the supervisor of the fleet heading south this time, Imperial Eunuch Sun Yud. "The fleet is heading south to trade with other countries. Your Highness, please don't use your weapons. Furthermore, the Wen Nation has always been paying tribute to the imperial court. They could be considered a vassal state of the Great Tang." Sun Yud raised his finger and said weakly to Li Xiaogong. From a certain perspective, he was the weakest supervisor in history. After all, the commander of this fleet was Li Xiaogong. In the entire Great Tang, only Li Heir had the right to criticize Li Xiaogong. In the TV series The Legend of Wu Meiyang, Emperor Taizong's trusted eunuch Wang often wore purple clothes. Actually, this was not accurate. China's ancient official uniform system was formed in the Sui Dynasty and was custom-made in the Tang Dynasty. Generally speaking, Rank 3 and above wore purple robes. Rank 4 dark red robes. Rank 5 light red robes. Rank 6 dark green robes. Rank 7 light green robes. Rank 8 dark green robes. And rank 9 light blue robes. Eunuchs were the same as other officials. They wore uniforms of appropriate colors according to their rank. However, there was a problem. During the Jingguan era, Li Er issued an edict that there would be no rank 3 officials in the imperial eunuch province. Rank for eunuchs were the highest. Thus, the old book of Tang said, at the end of Yongshun, 70 years to the end, the power was still in the hands of the eunuchs. It was only during the Kaiyuan era that Emperor Xuanzong gave eunuchs a rank 3 official position if he liked them slightly. Only then did eunuchs wearing purple clothes appear. Eunuch son, did you forget what His Majesty said before we left? Li Xiaogong replied with a faint and then shouted, You may have forgotten, but I haven't forgotten a single word. At that time, His Majesty said, outside the borders of the Great Tang, as soldiers of the Great Tang, we must ensure the safety of the people of the Great Tang traveling with the fleet. The people of the Great Tang must not be bullied anywhere. If we encounter an enemy, we must destroy them with all our strength. Chamberlain's son, last night, the fleet lost 28 soldiers, 12 sailors, and 2 heavily injured. Tell me, don't you think this prince has a good reason to attack? Sun Yud was speechless. Li Xiaogong turned around, faced the fleet on the sea, and said loudly, as the saying goes, blood for blood. I am going to attack Neon under the imperial order to avenge the soldiers and sailors who died last night. Are you willing to follow my orders? As a Grandmaster expert, Li Xiaogong's roar was not soft at all. Basically, every ship could hear his voice. Yes, Your Highness. By the decree of the Emperor, we will send troops to the Wen Nation. Blood for blood. Yes, Your Highness. By the decree of the Emperor, we will send troops to the Wen Nation. Blood for blood. As soon as Li Xiaogong's voice fell, he immediately received a tsunami-like response. They had been inexplicably attacked by a group of pirates, and so many of their fellow soldiers had died. The soldiers were suppressing a wave of anger in their hearts. The Tangs were proud, and the Tang army was inviolable. Li Xiaogong smiled slightly, looked back at Sun Yud, and then said lightly, Although this group of pirates may not have anything to do with the Neon Imperial Court, we have lost so many soldiers and crew members, and I can't go back empty-handed. Even if I go back, I won't be able to explain it to their families. So, this time, I will definitely go to Neon. After that, he pulled out the long sword at his waist, pointed it to the sky with a clang, and said loudly, Let's go to Neon. Sun Yud's face turned red. He wanted to refute, but there was nothing he could do. He didn't dare to refute. The soldiers in front of him were blinded by hatred. They only had revenge and killing in their eyes. At this time, whoever dared to jump out would definitely become the target of public criticism. Sun Yud said that he and the Neon people had not reached the point where they could risk their lives for him. Woo woo woo. Suddenly, a bleak and distant horn sounded on the sea. Li Xiaogong led the people on the island and began to board the ship. The envoys next to him all had different expressions. Some were afraid, and some were worried. Obviously, they were worried that their countries would be attacked by the Tang Empire one day, just like Neon. Looking at the powerful army of the Tang Empire, they felt that their countries couldn't stop it. Envoys, don't worry. The King of Neon is not good at educating people. He allowed the pirates to run rampant and attack the Tang Empire's fleet. That's why I gave him a warning. As the saying goes, if others don't offend me, I won't offend them. The Tang Empire's army will never take the initiative to provoke trouble. Who was Li Xiaogong? How could he not know what the envoys were thinking? As he walked, he comforted them warmly. After the envoys understood Li Xiaogong's words, they felt more or less at ease. Tang Empire is mighty. Shang Empire is mighty. Your Royal Highness is mighty. Renbiao, I came here this time because I have something to ask of you. Late in the morning, Li Zexuan assigned training tasks to the personal guards who were not instructors today. After inviting Li Gang to supervise them personally, he sneaked out of the academy alone, returned to Chang'an, and went directly to Wang Renbiao's house. Xiaoxian, just say it. As long as I can help, the Wang family will do our best to help you, Wang Renbiao said with a smile. Thank you in advance, Renbiao. Li Zixuan laughed and then got to the point. I want Renbiao to help me investigate the recent movements of the fleet going south. I have a feeling that something big is going to happen there. I think with the Wang family's channels, you can still find out the news, right? Wang Renbiao frowned. Li Zixuan's request was not simple at all. On the vast sea, where could he go to find out the news? I will try my best to find out the news for you. Xiaoxian, wait for me for a few days. Wang Renbiao thought about it and finally agreed. Although it was difficult, it was not impossible for the Wang family. Ha! Thank you for your trouble, Renbiao. Li Zixuan smiled, then got up and prepared to leave. Sometimes, it would be much more convenient to have an additional friend. Back then, he and the Wang family of Taiyuan had almost become enemies, but fortunately, they became allies in the end. You're welcome. Haha, I owe you a favor. I still have things to do at the academy, so I'll leave first. Renbiao, if you have any news, you can come to Yanwang College to find me directly. Chapter 725. Father, look, there's so many big ships coming from the sea. Japan, Honshu Island, Kanazawa Harbor. Near noon, the fishermen on the shore began to pack up their boats and prepare to go home. 7 or 8 children with small buns were picking up shells or chasing each other on the beach. One of the children suddenly saw the ships covering the sky and shouted happily as if he had found a treasure. Not far from the child, there was a bare-chested, middle-aged fisherman. When he heard his child shout, he subconsciously smiled and said, "That's just the government's ship." Halfway through his sentence, his voice suddenly stopped. He raised his head and casually swept his gaze around. He caught a glimpse of the endless sea of ships. Clearly, a fleet of this scale was not something that the local government could possess. Is this the imperial court's ship? The other fishermen also noticed the abnormality and began to guess. No, it's not the imperial court's ship. It's not the imperial court's ship. It's the Tang Empire's. The Tang Empire's army is here. Run. After a sharp-eyed fisherman saw the big Tang character on the sail of the ship, his face was suddenly full of horror. He pulled his child and ran back. It should be noted that in ancient times, the Japanese people only had their own national language and did not have their own writing. Later, the Han culture was introduced to Japan, and the cultured Japanese began to write in Han. After the middle of the 5th century AD, the Japanese people created a way to write Japanese using Chinese characters as interlocutory symbols. After the 8th century, this method of using Chinese characters as interlocutory symbols has been widely adopted. In other words, although the Japanese at this time used characters similar to Chinese characters, the pronunciation was their own country's pronunciation, and many people knew some Chinese characters. It's really the Tang Empire's army, my God. What do we do wrong? We actually attracted so many Tang Empire's army. Let's run. If you don't run now, you won't be able to run anymore. In the blink of an eye, the crowd on the coast all scattered and fled. Some people didn't even take the fishing gear on their fishing boats and ran away. Woo! With the sound of a horn, the huge fleet began to dock. Li Xiao opened the way in front. After Li Xiaogong got off the boat, he quickly bowed and said, "Your Highness will reach Fanio City, the capital of a nation, 80 miles east from here. However, there's so many of us. We'll definitely meet the local armies of a nation on the way." Li Xiaogong sneered. "Oomph, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. What's the point? How's Wu Di doing?" "Your Highness, I'm fine." Wu Di hurriedly ran over and cupped his fists. I will leave you with 8,000 elites to guard the ships of the harbor. If anything happens to the ships, you will be punished according to military law." Li Xiaogong ordered solemnly with a straight face. Other than the possibility that he would be impeached, he was also taking other risks. His fleet was carrying a large amount of supplies, including the Great Tang's future food supplies. If they were stolen, the fleet that had mobilized the entire country to send south would truly end up empty-handed. Li Xiaogong could not tolerate such a situation. This general obeys. Your Highness, please be at ease. This general swears to hand over the goods on the ship. However, this general feels that 5,000 soldiers will be enough. Your Highness is precious, and you must be careful in one nation. Although Wu Di was somewhat regretful that he had been assigned to guard the fleet, he still cupped his fists and accepted the order. Li Shaogong waved his hand and said, 8,000 it is. Even if this king doesn't bring a single soldier, I'd like to see if the one nation dares to attack this king. All you need to do is lead the army here and guard the supplies. After saying this, he turned to Li Shao and sternly ordered, organize the army and set out for Fanio City. This general obeys. All soldiers of the three armies assemble. The construction of Japan's capital had begun during the Fanio era. When Emperor Goku was elected, the capital was set at Fanio City, located in the southern part of the Nara Basin. Emperor Tenzi's capital was moved to Dajin City, located about 40 kilometers north of Fanio City. When the Chu were burned, the pitiful land was scorched. During the rebellion of Run and Shun, Dajin City was destroyed in the flames of war. When Emperor Takeda was on the throne, the capital was moved to Fujiwara City, located in the Nara Basin, surrounded by the three mountains of Yamato. Fujiwara City adopted the chessboard-like neighborhood structure of China's ancient cities for the first time. It was considered the first capital city in Japan's history. Many scholars later called Fujiwara City the first capital city of Japan, not because the previous city was surrounded by wilderness, but because Fujiwara City adopted the chessboard-like neighborhood structure of China's cities for the first time. It was the result of Tang Feng's influence. At this time, Japan, one nation, was in the Fanio era, and Emperor Goku was in power. She was the first female emperor of one nation. At the same time, she was the 33rd emperor of one nation. From the first Emperor Shenwu to the 14th Emperor Zhong-ai, these 14 emperors couldn't be confirmed in history. They were probably fictional characters created by Koji and Neon Shoji to complete the transition from the Shenwu era to the human era. Empress Shigong, who filled in the 70-year history between Emperor Zhong-ai and Emperor Ingshun, also couldn't be said to be a real existence. Therefore, the 15th Emperor Ingshun, who had a more real existence, should be the real ancestor of the Japanese emperors known as the Wanchur lineage. Besides, strictly speaking, the previous emperors could only be considered kings. The title of emperor was coined by Prince Xingde of the Fanio dynasty. Your Highness, there are sounds of horse hooves ahead. The army advanced for about 5 kilometers. Li Zhao's expression changed, and he quickly stopped in his tracks and said to Li Shaogong, "Okay." Li Shaogong looked ahead and narrowed his eyes slightly. He let out a faint "okay," and then ordered, "Get into formation and prepare to meet the enemy." "Yes, sir." Li Shao responded, turned around, and shouted, "Get into formation and prepare to meet the enemy." Boom! The army dispersed, and the soldiers pulled out their modeo and stared ahead fiercely. After drifting on the sea for several months, their big swords were already thirsty. Dong, dong, dong. After a while, the sound of horse hooves got closer and closer. Looking into the distance, they could see a cavalry of more than 1,000 people running toward them. A small country actually has cavalry too? Interesting. Generally speaking, infantry had a natural disadvantage against cavalry. However, Li Shaogong didn't look nervous at all. Instead, he even had the time to gossip, making people feel that he wasn't here to fight, but to enjoy the scenery. Haha, they're just a bunch of shrimp soldiers and crab generals. How can they be a match for the Tang army? The bearded man laughed as he held a 3-feet-long broadsword that was similar in shape to the green dragon crescent blade. Chapter 726. Harumph. I am the county magistrate of Sichuan County, Hinoakai. May I ask what is the purpose of your visit? More than 1,000 cavalrymen galloped over. Then, a mustached Japanese man in an official uniform jumped off the horse. He saw that Li Shaogong was the leader of the army, so he came over and saluted him. Li Shaogong narrowed his eyes and listened to his subordinate's translation. He said lightly, "I'm the county magistrate of Hejian of the Tang Empire. I have something to discuss with the Queen of Higu. You're just a little county magistrate. Do you think you can stop me?" The county magistrate in Japan was called a county magistrate, which was similar to the county magistrate of the Tang Empire. 10 years ago, Crown Prince Shangda advocated for the Japanese people to call their ruler the emperor. Hino Akai's expression changed when he heard Li Shaogong call him the Queen of Higu instead of the Emperor of Higu. He gritted his teeth and stepped forward. "Oh, it is the county magistrate of Shanghua. However, if your highness wants to see the emperor, please let these soldiers stay here. I will personally escort you to Fanio City." "Umph. Bastard. Do I need you to teach me how to do things? Also, who allowed your king to call himself the emperor?" Li Shaogong was furious and reprimanded him. This, Hino Akai opened his mouth and his face turned pale. He was both embarrassed and angry. In the end, he clenched his fists and said, "The Wen nation has been paying tribute to the Tang Empire every year. I'm afraid it's not right for your highness to bring tens of thousands of soldiers here." Li Shaogong clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Hino Akai expressionlessly. A moment later, he said in a deep voice, after a while, he said, "So, you want to stop me?" As soon as he said this, the 10,000 soldiers behind him immediately clenched the MO swords in their hands. The situation in the field became somewhat tense. "Your Highness, this is my duty. I can't let you bring such a large army through Sichuan County." Hino Akai forced himself to bow and said, "Huh, do you think an old, weak, sick, and disabled person like you can stop me?" Li Shaogong was so angry that he laughed. He pointed at the army behind Hino Akai and mocked him. Just as Hino Akai was about to retort to save his face, Li Shaogong waved his hand and ordered, "Continue marching. This king is following the emperor's orders. Whoever dares to stop us, kill them. Nothing. Pardon. Kill. Kill. Kill." The army suddenly took 3 steps forward and let out 3 roars. Killing intent filled the air, and their auras were like rainbows. Hino Akai couldn't help but take 3 steps back. Not only him, but the cavalry behind him also retreated. To be precise, the cavalry's horses were frightened by the battle cries. "Ben Wang will ask you one last time. Are you going to move or not?" Li Shaogong asked coldly. In fact, he didn't want to waste time in front of this group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals. That was why he repeatedly gave Hino Akai chances. But Hino Akai thought that Li Shaogong was scared, and that Li Shaogong was just trying to scare him. He swallowed his saliva and straightened his neck. "This is my duty. I can't, Clang." Swoosh. Before he could finish his sentence, Li Shaogong had already lost his patience. He pulled out his sword and chopped off Hino Akai's head. The Japanese army was shocked. A slightly shorter general pointed at Li Shaogong and stammered, You, Li Shaogong was furious. "Li Shao, I will give you 800 men. Charge." "Yes, sir," Li Shao replied excitedly. He then picked a group of men and charged forward. Similarly, he didn't care about the short Japanese in front of him. "Baka, avenge the county princess. Kill." The general pulled out his saber and shouted as he urged his horse to charge towards the Tang army. "Chop the horse's legs." In truth, the cavalry that Hino Akai had brought with him were all old war horses. In terms of speed and momentum, there was a world of difference between them and the Turkic Khaganate cavalry. Li Shao bellowed as he swung his MO saber at lightning speed toward the warhorse that the general was riding. Hiss! The warhorse let out a whine and fell forward. The general was shocked and quickly got off his horse. Before he could stand firm, Li Zhao's MO saber was already slashing towards his neck. Difference. This was the difference in strength. As soon as the two armies clashed, the winner was obvious. Even though the Neon army had the advantage of horses, they were far from a match for the well-trained Tang army. Not to mention 800 Tang soldiers. Even if there were only 500 Tang soldiers, they were enough to beat the thousands of Neon soldiers and make them flee. Mercy. Ugh, Hino Akai's general begged for mercy at the critical moment. Unfortunately, Li Shao didn't understand him at all. His sword chopped off his head mercilessly. At the same time, the 800 Tang soldiers behind Li Shao were also swinging their swords and harvesting lives. Compared to infantrymen, cavalry's greatest advantage was their speed and impact when they clashed with each other. If the Neon cavalry charged directly, they might cause some trouble for the Tang army. However, Hino Akai had stopped in front of Li Shaogong and wanted to negotiate. If the Neon cavalry wanted to charge again, it was no different from a fool's dream. In addition, Li Shao and the others had broken the formation of the Japanese army. Now, the Japanese army was in a mess. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They wanted to fight back, but they were no match for the Tang army in terms of strength and speed. Run! The Tang army kills without batting an eye. In less than 15 minutes, more than half of the Japanese army had been killed. Li Zhao's 800 Tang soldiers only had a few light injuries. Some of the Japanese soldiers were so frightened that they quickly turned their horses around and ran for their lives. These fleeing soldiers seemed to have opened a window for the rest of the Japanese army. The remaining Japanese soldiers immediately scattered. At this moment, the advantage of cavalry was finally on display. They could run faster when they ran for their lives. There's no need to chase them. Li Shaogong quickly stopped Li Shao when he saw that he was about to give chase. He ordered, "Don't chase after them. Count the casualties and rest for a while before we continue to march to Fanio City." "Yes, my lord." Li Shao cupped his fist and accepted the order. "Your Highness, this Japanese official seems to be a little arrogant." The bearded man pursed his lips and said meaningfully. Li Shaogong thought for a moment and then nodded. A few years ago, this king met the Wa emissaries. They were all very respectful and obsequious. The Wa people today are truly different from before. This king would like to see just where these Wa people get their confidence from to be so disrespectful to this king and the great Tang. Li Shaogong's meaning was simple. He was very unhappy with Hino Akai's attitude. He wanted to see why the Japanese suddenly became arrogant. Chapter 7:27. The news of the Tang army defeating Hino Akai in Sichuan County spread quickly because of the deserters. Suddenly, the people in the other counties around Sichuan County were in a state of panic. Although Hino Akai only brought a little more than 1,000 people with him, and the Tang army had tens of thousands of soldiers, there were only 800 Tang soldiers who participated in the battle. Moreover, the Neon army was all cavalry. Under such circumstances, they could only hold on for less than half an hour. In addition, in order to wash away the crime of desertion, the fleeing soldiers naturally tried their best to exaggerate the fierceness and bravery of the Tang army. Through word of mouth, Li Shaogong became an 8-foot-tall, golden-armored general holding a huge sword weighing hundreds of kilograms, while the Tang army became hellish demons clad in iron armor, with infinite strength and invulnerable to swords and spears. The people in the counties along the way all shut their doors and did not come out, and the local officials also fled the county headquarters, not to mention organizing an army to fight against the Tang army. Therefore, the army led by Li Shaogong went all the way without any hindrance. In the evening, they arrived at the capital of Neon, Fanio City. Don't doubt the marching speed of the army. Li Shaogong and the others used more than half a day to march more than 80 miles. Even the marching records before the Tang Dynasty, this was not the top speed. In the Wei Shu, the biography of Xiahou Yuan, Yuan was a general. He often went to the enemy when he was in a hurry. Therefore, there was a saying in the army, Xiahou Yuan, a military officer, 500 miles in 3 days and 1,000 in 6 days. Xiahou Yuan should be an infantryman. On average, he could travel 167 miles in a day. Of course, the day here referred to the day, not the night. Therefore, it was not shocking that Li Shaogong and the others used more than half a day to march 80 miles. Order the soldiers to cook and set up camp here. If the Neon Queen does not come out to see me, we will attack the city tomorrow. The army arrived at the Moon Mountain outside Fanio City. Li Shaogong looked down at the palace below, which was somewhat similar to the Chong, an imperial city, and then ordered Li Xiao, who was behind him. Mu. Throughout the Mu, will be directly replaced by Mu in the text. After marching 80 miles, the soldiers were more or less tired. In addition, the sky was about to turn dark. Li Shaogong, who had rich battle experience, certainly would not choose to attack the city at this time. Yes, sir. Li Xiao responded and hurriedly went to pass down the order. The bearded man stood slightly to Li Xiaogong's left. He had been looking down at soaring bird capital with narrowed eyes. Your Highness, Fanio capital is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. Although the city is big, it's like a turtle in a jar. The birds are like caged birds. Even though the Japanese had learned the architectural style of the Great Tang, they had only learned the form and not the spirit. Moreover, the city walls are short, and there is no moat in front of the city gate. If your Highness wants to take over the Japanese capital, I'm afraid it won't take much effort. Around the capital were the famous Yamato 3 mountains of Japan. To the west was Urching Mountain, also known as the God of Heaven Mountain. To the north was Xiangju Mountain. Legend has it that gods lived on the mountain. And to the south, where Li Shaogong and the others were now, was Mu Pin Mountain. Legend has it that the first emperor of Japan, Emperor Shinwu, ascended the throne on this mountain. The 3 mountains surrounded the capital. Although it made the capital look beautiful, it also limited its development. The bearded man clearly understood the art of war. At a glance, he could see the flaws in the capital's geography and the city structure. Li Shaogong nodded and praised, Zhongjian is right, but we can't let our guard down. We have to be on guard against the Japanese's sneak attacks. The Japanese nowadays don't seem to know their place. They even dare to call themselves the Emperor. The ruler of the Central Plains was called the Emperor, while the ruler of Japan called himself the Emperor. Li Shaogong felt that this was a humiliation to the Great Tang, so he was furious. The bearded man smiled and said, Indeed, although I have never been to a nation, I have heard many things about it. Previously, Prince Shengde of Wanation was the regent and vigorously implemented many new policies, which improved the overall strength of Wanation by a lot. In the Imperial Palace of Japan, the news that Li Shaogong had led his army into the country had long ago reached this place. The officials gathered in the palace were all panicked and fearful, and the mood in the hall was abnormally oppressive. Reporting, Your Majesty, the Tang army has already reached the outskirts of the city and is setting up camp on Mu Pin Mountain. At this moment, a soldier entered the hall and bowed to the dignified woman in golden attire sitting at the head of the table. Buzz! The officials in the hall were all shocked. Ever since the coup more than 30 years ago, Fanio City had always been peaceful. Now that the Tang army had suddenly arrived, everyone was caught off guard. The Tang army has arrived at the city. It is said that their leader is a duke of the Great Tang. Does anyone have a plan to deal with this? An old but sonorous voice came from the throne. It was Empress Gu who had spoken. 35 years ago, the head of the most powerful family in Japan, the Suo clan, Suo Matsi, although there was the word Matsi in his name, this person was a man, sent an assassin to assassinate Emperor Chongjun, who was supported by him at that time. Then he supported the 39-year-old Empress Ida as the Empress, who was now the 74-year-old Empress Togu. In the early days of the Togu dynasty, the actual rulers of Japan had always been Empress Togu's nephew, Crown Prince Shengde and Suo Matsi. 5 years ago, Crown Prince Shengde passed away, and the imperial power gradually began to fall into the hands of Empress Togu. Last year, Suo Matsi, the head of the Suo clan, also passed away. Now, Empress Togu completely grasped the imperial power. Your Majesty, I think we should first find out why the Tang Empire has stepped into our country's territory, and then talk about other things. Not long after Empress Togu finished speaking, a young man in his late 20s came forward and said, Well, Big Brother Shanbei's words are reasonable. What do the other officials think? Empress Togu thought about it and agreed. This young man was Crown Prince Shengde's son, mountain-back elder brother Wang, in Neon people's names are so strange. He was also the successor chosen by the Emperor of Japan. His ability and knowledge were naturally outstanding, quite similar to his father's style. Your Majesty, I don't agree with Big Brother Shanbei's opinion. While the officials looked at each other, a short young official with a mustache walked out with an arrogant expression. He slightly leaned forward to Empress Tugu and then said, I think that Japan has been paying tribute to the Tang Empire before, but the Tang Empire did not abide by the agreement and invaded without authorization. This is not putting us in their eyes. This is a good time for us to contact Beach and Goguryeo to resist the Tang Empire together. If we can destroy more than 10,000 troops from the Tang Empire in one fell swoop, Japan will be the well-deserved king of this sea area. Chapter 728. Fanio City, When Nation Imperial Palace. The person who spoke against it was called Su Wisya-e. He was the current head of the Su family, and also the son of Su was wife. He had always been at odds with his brother, the king of Mountain Back. He was also very arrogant. Of course, as the head of the Su family, the richest family in Japan, he had the right to be arrogant. As soon as Su Wisya-e's arrogant words came out, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They secretly thought that he was really bold. In the eyes of the One Nation, the Tang Dynasty at this time was the real heavenly empire. The Tang Dynasty was also a good race in their eyes. According to historical records, when the Tang Dynasty's merchants went to Japan to do business, the local Japanese often warmly entertained the Tang Dynasty. At night, they would offer their wives, daughters, and sisters to the Tang Dynasty in the hope of giving birth to a son or a daughter. However, this behavior was only done in a small number in the Tang Dynasty. In the Song Dynasty, borrowing seeds began to become a custom. But now, Su Wisya actually wanted to attack the Tang Dynasty's army. This made many ministers feel that it was absurd. Absolutely not. The big brother Wang hurriedly stepped forward and said, Your Majesty, Su Wisya's method is simply disregarding the life and death of the One Nation. Let's not talk about whether we could defeat the more than 10,000 Tang army outside. Even if we do, we will only incur the infinite anger of the Tang Emperor. Don't doubt, with the character of the current Tang Emperor, once he gets angry, the One Nation will definitely be in danger of being destroyed. Your Majesty and ministers, please think twice. You're really greedy for life and afraid of death. The Tang Empire's army is only 10,000. While our Fanio city has 80,000 elites. How can we not defeat the Tang Empire's army? Su Wisya stepped out of the crowd and glanced contemptuously at the big brother Wang. Then, he arrogantly said, You're afraid before the battle. Big brother Wang, you're not worthy of being the descendant of Crown Prince Shingda. Moreover, according to the intelligence, the Tang Empire not only has an army, but also thousands of warships and countless provisions. If we swallow these warships and provisions, even if the Tang Emperor gets angry in the future and attacks us, will the One Nation still be afraid of the Tang Empire? As soon as his words fell, the hall fell into silence, but some people's hearts were not calm. Your Majesty, Su Wisya is right. I think this plan is feasible. I also think that this plan is feasible. The Suo family's influence in the imperial court, coupled with the fact that there was indeed a group of radical ministers, caused many voices of agreement to appear in the main hall. The big brother Wang on a mountain back was anxious and quickly retorted, Have you all forgotten the confrontation between the Tang army and the local army in Sichuan County? 800 Tang soldiers easily defeated more than 1,000 defenders of Sichuan County at the cost of 0 casualties. With such strength, it will be harder for us to win than to reach the heavens. Even if they win, the One Nation will be greatly damaged because of this. They will no longer be able to deal with the anger of the Emperor of the Tang Empire. So please think twice. Moreover, the current situation has not reached the point where it cannot be eased. As long as we clarify the purpose of the Tang Emperor's visit and make some concessions in some aspects, the Tang Emperor will be willing to withdraw his troops. Eldest brother Wang on mountain back represented the previous crown prince Shengda's faction, so there were many officials in the court who supported him. Moreover, his opinion was very much in line with the thoughts of the old conservative officials, so there were immediately echoes of agreement in the court. Your Majesty, I think what Brother Shanbei said is reasonable. Your Majesty should prioritize the one nation and not act on impulse. I second the motion. Of course, there were still many officials who did not speak. They did not help either side. Obviously, even if Crown Prince Shengde and Su's wife had passed away, there were still 3 factions in the court of a nation. However, at this time, the power of the Empress Dowager was greater. After all, the influence of the living was still slightly higher. Cough. Seeing the 2 sides arguing endlessly in the court, the Empress Dowager coughed dryly, and the hall immediately quieted down. Then she slowly glanced at the officials in the court and said, "What you 2 said is reasonable, but I think it is not appropriate for us to confront the Tang army head-on at the moment. Since the Tang army has camped outside the city and has not immediately attacked, it means that there is still room for negotiation. Therefore, we can send a messenger to ask the commandery prince of the Tang Empire why he is here, and then we can make a decision. If we can invite the commandery prince of the Tang Empire to the imperial palace, of course, it would be best." Yes, the Empress of one nation was the same as the Emperor of China, calling herself I. In fact, it was not only this. The titles of Empress, Empress Dowager, and Crown Prince of the East Palace were the same in one nation as in the Tang Empire. It was mainly because the ancient one nation admired China's culture very much. Most of their languages were learned from China. From the Empress to the common people, no one did not admire the Tang Empire. Su's wife sneered and said, "The commandery prince of the Tang Empire lives like a prince. How can he have the courage to come to Fanyo City? If he dares to come, I will crawl to the morning court in the future. Yes, how can the commandery prince of the Tang Empire risk his life to enter the city? Absolutely impossible." The Empress Dowager frowned, and then she waved her hand and said, "I have made up my mind. Brother Mountain-back, recommend someone to go outside the city to negotiate with the Tang army." Brother Mountain-back thought for a while, then bowed and said, "Your Majesty, I recommend the son of Sister Ono, Yoko Ono. He is proficient in Chinese and has a good understanding of the customs of the Tang Empire. He is the most suitable." Sister Ono was the person who helped Crown Prince Shengde to submit the letter of credence to the Sui dynasty. He was a very famous diplomat of the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Approved. Old Chung will tell you another one. It is said that there was a monk who went to 100 Flowers building one day to find a girl. No, Chonyo, you are talking nonsense again. Monks have to abide by the rules and precepts. How can he go to find a prostitute? Listening to the voice, it should be Li Tai's voice. Yinhuang College, the sky had just turned dark. After the students took a bath, they lay on the bed and began to rest. After 2 days of military training, many students had gradually begun to get used to this kind of life. At least they were no longer as tired as last night. Therefore, several second generations in Dormitory 001 chatted in a low voice. What was even more excessive was that Cheng Chumo, this smelly and shameless thing, actually told dirty jokes. Hey, how is it impossible? Not all monks will abide by the rules. Hey, no. Ching K, don't interrupt me. Wait for me to finish telling you, lest I forget. Cheng Chumo muttered, and then continued. Besides, the monk touched the prostitute's front and back with his hand, and then shouted, "Strange, strange. The front is like a nun, and the back is like a disciple. Don't you think it's strange?" Chapter 729. F*CK. Ching Chumo, you're so F*King perverted. In Dormitory 001, after Sun Ziffin heard the dirty jokes, he shouted loudly and ridiculed. Then he laughed and said, Hee, but I like it. Come. Chonyo, use your intelligence and tell another one. Although spring had already passed, this group of teenagers who were still in their adolescence would inevitably talk about some explicit topics to stimulate the secretion of hormones. Li Tai said angrily, F***CK? Sun Ziffin, you and Chonyo are so dirty. What a pair of cultured scums. The chubby boy was usually a little arrogant, but the circle he came into contact with was generally more elegant. At this moment, hearing the vulgar conversation in the dorm, Li Tai, who was in the dark, couldn't help but blush. Chung Chumo smiled wretchedly and said, Hey, how are we cultured scums? Isn't it natural for a man and a woman to love? Huh, Baolin, don't you think so? Forget it. You won't understand even if I tell you. Yuchi Baolin, who was about to get up and talk, suddenly touched his nose gloomily and then lay back down. In this dorm, he was the most honest person, so Chung Chumo could only bully him a little. All right, let's all go to sleep. There's military training tomorrow. Li Changxian, who was sleeping on the top bunk, obviously sensed Li Tai's embarrassment and spoke up to help him out. Sleep? Who can fall asleep so early? Besides, Huayu hasn't finished washing his clothes. Sun Ziffin had just finished listening to the dirty jokes, and his blood was boiling. How could he fall asleep now? Besides, what he said was right. Qin Huayu was still washing his clothes under the moonlight by the sink inside. Speaking of which, Qin Huayu had miscalculated. Usually, he preferred to be quiet at home and only bathe once every 2 to 3 days. Therefore, when school started, he only brought 3 sets of clothes with him. However, at Yinhuang Academy, every night when he came back, his clothes would be drenched in sweat. How could he not bath? After showering, he couldn't possibly continue wearing those sweaty clothes, right? Qin Huayu, who always paid attention to his appearance, would definitely not do such a thing. In this way, after Qin Huayu showered tonight and found that he didn't have any clothes to change tomorrow, how could he? Thus, the eldest son of the Duke of E, our young master Qin, washed his clothes for the first time in his life. For this reason, he received a lot of ridicule from Chung Chumo and Sun Ziffin. 2. As for the others, they were much more cunning than Qin Huayu. When school started, they brought 7 or 8 sets of clothes. Even if they changed their clothes every day, they would still be able to last until the academy's weekend. Oh, it's so lively. It seems that your training during the day is too little, and you still have the energy to talk nonsense at night. Just as Chingchumo was about to agree with Sun Ziffin's words, a familiar voice suddenly came from outside the door of Dorm 001. F***CK. It's Yamacho, Little Xian. The 6 people in the room all felt their hearts skip a beat, and they secretly cursed. Qin Huayu stuffed his clothes into the wooden bucket, and then quietly slipped to his bed in an attempt to muddle through. Open the door, Li Zishuan said faintly from outside. Although his voice was soft, it seemed to have a mysterious, penetrating power that directly entered their ears. Qin Huayu looked at his unscrupulous roommates, who were chatting happily just now, but were now curled up in bed like ostriches. He could only bite the bullet and personally open the door. Yamacho, Qin Huayu called out awkwardly. Although he was very familiar with Li Zishuan, and Li Zishuan was half his brother-in-law, now that they were in the academy, he had to do things according to the rules. In public, he had to call him Yamacho. Huayu, what are you doing with your hands full of water? Under the moonlight, Li Zishuan saw the water droplets on Qin Huayu's hands, and he squinted his eyes and asked, I just want to wash my clothes. Qin Huayu scratched his head a little embarrassedly and said. Li Tai, Chung Chumo, and Sun Ziffin on the bed almost burst out laughing. What? Weren't you all chatting happily just now? Why are you still pretending to be asleep? All of you come down. Li Zishuan's attitude changed, and he said sternly. This was really a case of extreme joy begetting sorrow. Seeing that Li Zishuan was going to be serious, Li Tai, Li Changxian, and the others on the bed all got out of bed and stood together with Qin Huayu. Although Qin Huayu is breaking the academy's rules by washing clothes at night, he is still better than you guys who are so bored that you don't sleep at night. Now all of you go out and stand in military posture. Other than Qin Huayu, who will only stand for 15 minutes. Everyone else will stand for an hour. After standing, go back to sleep. If anyone dares to slack off, the time will be doubled. Li Zixuan pointed at the door and shouted. No. Do you really have to be so ruthless? Cheng Chumo stared and asked weakly. Although he had martial arts and wasn't afraid of standing in military posture, who wouldn't want to lie comfortably in bed and rest at night? Cheng Chumo will stand for 2 hours. The rest of you will continue as before. Li Zixuan looked at this joker indifferently and said casually, You. Cheng Chumo almost vomited blood. He subconsciously wanted to say something, but when he thought about how he was just being naughty and got an extra hour of military posture, if he were to be naughty again, he probably wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. The 5 unlucky people, under the lead of the current crown prince, Li Chengxian, left the dormitory unhappily. Li Zixuan said, Don't slack off. I'll be watching you guys from the shadows. If I find out that anyone is slacking off, you know the consequences. This guy was obviously playing tricks on them again. Tonight's dormitory inspection was a last-minute idea by Li Zixuan. He just said that Cheng Chumo was bored out of his mind, but now he was the one who was bored out of his mind. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come here to do a dormitory inspection. After Li Zixuan and the others left, Li Zixuan began to slowly go to the other dormitories to visit. When he was in high school, he was often visited by the teachers. Now that he had become the yamacho of a big college, he began to check other people's dormitories. The speed at which one's life changes is truly unimaginable. However, with this, there would be a lot of unlucky people in Yinhuang College tonight. In the open space in front of the student dormitory, Li Tai stood in military posture with his head held high and his chest out. His body didn't move, but his mouth was secretly moving. He said, Hee, ugly ox, I'll teach you to stand for an extra hour, haha. This can be considered as resolving the hatred in my heart. F*CK. We are roommates. Chinke, how can you be so unsympathetic? Who the hell is your roommate? If it weren't for you telling such vulgar stories in the middle of the night, would we be standing here now? Hey. Look, you Donkai and the others have also been caught, ha. Could it be that they haven't slept yet? Ha. Isn't that Xiaoka? TSK. It's so lively tonight. Chapter 730. Cool. Why are you here? In the open space in front of the dormitory, Li Chengxian asked calmly, while keeping an eye out for Li Zixuan's surprise attack. Li Ku, who was standing behind him, said gloomily, I went to bed too early last night and didn't even get to know my roommates. I'm not as sleepy as last night, so I wanted to talk to them a little more and get to know them better. In the end, I was caught by the Yamacho. Hee. Cool, how long did you guys stand as punishment? Li Tai interrupted. Li Ku said faintly, 1 hour. Oh, so it's only 1 hour. Li Tai was a little disappointed. Huh. Look, another group is here. What the heck? Isn't that Meng Wenhao, Iron Egg, and the others? Why were they caught too? Cheng Chumo saw another group of people in front of him and shouted excitedly. When he saw who it was, he was shocked. Pfft. Maybe some of them are washing clothes, like Huayu? Sun Zifen couldn't help but laugh. Qin Huayu looked embarrassed, but Cheng Chumo said happily, Hee. Why don't we ask them how long they stand as punishment later? If I had known, I would have gone and washed clothes just now. Damn it, when you guys leave later, I'll have to stand here for another hour. What a scam. Sun Zifen and Li Tai said disdainfully in unison. Useless, I won't wash clothes even if you beat me to death. After a quarter of an hour, Li Zixuan walked out of the dormitory slowly, followed by Pang Feiji. At this time, there were nearly 70 to 80 students standing upright in the open space in front of the dormitory. Li Zixuan thought angrily in his heart. There are quite a lot of students who have nothing better to do. Looks like they're starting to accept the current training volume. I can get Qin Xiong to give them more training tomorrow. Cough, cough. Stop talking. Yamacho is here. Li Chengxian's lips moved slightly as he whispered to the people around him. In fact, he didn't need to say anything. The students standing there were always paying attention to the movements at the door of the dormitory. When Li Zixuan came out, basically all the students immediately stopped their little tricks and stood in a standard military posture. At ease, Li Zixuan walked to the front of the line and shouted, Swoosh! The students thought that Li Zexuan was going to show them mercy. One by one, they excitedly took a step forward, but then they heard Li Zexuan's dull voice. Does anyone still remember what the Yanhuang College Student Handbook said? What time do you have to sleep at night? This voice was obviously laced with anger, causing the students to instantly wake up. One by one, they pretended to be listless in order to avoid being called out. Chung Chumo, tell me, what time do you have to sleep? Sometimes, the thing you don't want the most often happens. Chung Chumo kept saying in his heart, don't call me. Don't call me. But in the end, he was called out. It was really fate. I forgot. Chung Chumo scratched his head awkwardly and said weakly. In fact, he didn't forget at all. When the Yanhuang College Student Handbook was given to him, he took it home and never opened it again. Moreover, this guy seemed to be using it to wipe his ass. You forgot? Then you can stand for another 30 minutes later. Li Zexuan said indifferently. You. Chung Chumo was just about to say a few words of acceptance speech when he saw Li Zexuan's slightly dangerous eyes and decisively shut his mouth. Sun Zifen, you answer for Chung Chumo. Sun Zifen, who was secretly laughing in his heart, immediately felt tragedy. The student handbook had so many pages. How could he spend the time to read it? Yamacho, a student's memory is not very good after leaving the bed. Can you let me go to the dormitory to recall it? After stammering for a long time, this joker finally thought of a perfect answer. Li Zexuan said angrily, you can stand for another hour later. Chung Chumo couldn't help but laugh out loud. When he saw Li Zexuan looking over, he quickly pursed his lips and held back his laughter. In an instant, his tanned face turned red. Yamacho, I know what time it is. Just when everyone bowed their heads in silence, a voice suddenly sounded in the crowd. Li Zexuan looked over and found that the person who had just spoken was Jia Jiayin, who ranked 4th in the entrance exam. Well, whether in ancient times or modern times, teachers would have a deeper impression of students with good grades. As for why this little top student was caught, don't ask. If you ask, it would be like doing laundry. Jia Jiayin, then you tell me, Li Zexuan said in a kind tone. He found that he was now more and more immersed in the profession of a teacher. Seeing this, most of the students in the field couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. They didn't want to work overtime like Chung Chumo and Sun Zifen, the two unlucky people. It wasn't until this moment that they realized that lying in bed was more comfortable. Back to Yamacho, the Yanhuang College Student Handbook stipulates that the lights in the dormitory must be turned off at night, and then all students must immediately keep quiet and lie in bed. You are not allowed to walk around at will. That's 9 o'clock in the evening. For modern people, going to bed at this time may be a little early, but in ancient times, it was abnormal not to go to bed at this time. A prodigy was indeed a prodigy. Jia Jiayin recited the relevant regulations in the student handbook word for word, and the students couldn't help but look at him in a new light. Well, very good. Jia Jiayin, you can go back and rest now. Remember, if you want to do laundry next time, you must finish it before night to avoid being punished again. Li Zexuan nodded and said warmly, Yes, Yamacho. Jia Jiayin saluted Li Zexuan in front of everyone's envious eyes, and then prepared to walk back to the dormitory. Perhaps he felt that Li Zexuan's attitude at the moment was not bad. He actually stopped and said, Sir, I accidentally rubbed some grass stains on my clothes today, so the clothes are more difficult to wash. I want to ask if there's a shop selling locust or bath beans in the academy. Otherwise, I will probably be punished the next time I encounter such a situation. Yes. Yamacho, we need locust. Bath beans are also okay. Jia Jiayin's words could be regarded as the hearts of most people. These students basically rarely wash clothes at home. Now that they just started, not to mention that they didn't have any skills, they didn't even have locust or bath beans. How could it be possible to wash it clean without some time? Chapter 731. After hearing Jia Jiayin's words, Li Zexuan suddenly understood. He was just wondering why these students were still washing clothes at this hour. It turned out that it was because they didn't have the help of locusts to wash clothes. The earliest ancient people used plant ash as a detergent because it contained potassium carbonate, which could remove the dirt on clothes. According to Cao Gongji, silk was refined with bars as ash. It was made of pure silk, and it was made of jade. The jade in this sentence was shell ash, which contained calcium hydroxide. When mixed with plant ash, it could produce potassium hydroxide. When it was immersed in water to wash silk fabrics, it had a chemical reaction with the oil attached to the surface of silk fabrics to produce potassium soap, which could wash silk fabrics clean and bright. Later, the ancient people of the Wei and Jin dynasties began to use locust and bath beans to wash clothes. Locust could produce foam and water and had the ability to remove dirt. Later, Sun Simiao invented a new way to wash clothes. It was to wash the dirty blood on the pig's pancreas, tear off the fatty liver on it, grind it into a paste, add soybean powder and spices, mix it evenly, and dry it in a ventilated place to become bath beans that could remove dirt from clothes. All right, I got it. However, the military training is a special period, and the conditions will naturally be more difficult. You don't have to pay too much attention to it, as long as the clothes don't smell. After the military training, the academy will have everything that should be available. Li Zishuan said lightly. When the academy was first built, there was indeed some space left for shops, but he had been too busy and didn't have time to attract investment, so there was basically no place to spend money in the academy except for the cafeteria. As for whether to make soap or not, it depended on whether he was in the mood. Yes, Yamacho, I understand. Jia Jiayin cupped his hands and walked towards the dormitory. Li Zishuan nodded secretly in his heart. He thought that although this child looked a bit fierce, his temperament and knowledge were not bad. Men, in the end, still relied on talent and knowledge. In ancient times, there were many famous people who were ugly but eventually became successful. Attention! After Jia Jiayin left, Li Zishuan shouted loudly and then said, "Start to stand in military posture. Pang Feiji, you supervise them. If anyone's actions are not standard or secretly lazy, give them extra time. Do you understand?" Pang Feiji wiped the sweat off his forehead. There was a crown prince and 2 princes here, but Li Zishuan asked him to spy on them. Wasn't this asking for his life? Yes. I understand now. Under Li Zishuan's pressure, Pang Feiji quickly agreed. Li Zishuan nodded in satisfaction and said, from tomorrow night onwards, you and the other instructors must check the dormitories one by one. If you find anyone who has violated the rules, you will be punished the same way as today. You're not allowed to sleep until midnight. Do you understand? Yes. Yamacho. Pang Feiji felt bitter. They were actually quite tired as instructors during the day, but now that they were writing, they had less time to rest. Thousands of miles away, in Wen Nation, on the Mu Pan Mountain outside Fanio City. Prince, the king of Wen Nation has sent an envoy. He is now outside the camp. Do you want to see him? In the main tent, Li Xiaogong was looking at the map on the table when a messenger suddenly came in and bowed. Li Xiaogong raised his head and said lightly, "Let him in." Yes. After a while, a short man in Wen Nation clothes came in and bowed to Li Xiaogong. "Yoko Ono greets your highness." This sentence was spoken in extremely pure Mandarin with a Guangzhong accent. Li Xiaogong raised his eyebrows and said, "You can speak Mandarin?" Yoko Ono bowed slightly and said, "The culture of the Central Plains is extensive and profound. The entire Neon Nation admires it. I have studied in the Central Plains for a period of time under the influence of my late father, so I can speak some Chinese." In 607 AD, the first government mission sent by Japan to China's Sui dynasty finally arrived in Luoyang. The leader of the mission was Yoko Ono's father, Yoko Ono. In 609 AD, Yoko Ono came to China again to send the Sui dynasty's envoy back to China. She also brought a group of overseas students and monks. At that time, Yoko Ono was also among them. Therefore, Yoko Ono knew the culture of the Central Plains very well. Li Xiaogong nodded slightly. He felt more comfortable talking to a Wen Nation person who could speak Mandarin. After a while, he asked, Why did the queen of the ancient kingdom send you here? Why didn't she come to see me personally? Arrogant. It could be said that Li Xiaogong's attitude was extremely arrogant. However, Yoko Ono's expression only changed slightly, and she did not dare to refute. Your Highness, Her Majesty's body is not in good condition, so it is inconvenient for her to leave the palace. I hope Your Highness can understand. Yoko Ono said slowly. Oomph. Inconvenient for her to leave the palace? Does she want me to enter the city personally to see her? When Li Xiaogong heard this, he glared and said angrily. Yoko Ono immediately put on a fearful expression and bowed down. Your Highness, please forgive me. Her Majesty is already old, and her body is not in good condition recently. She really can't leave the palace. Old? How old is she? Li Xiaogong asked a very rude question, but who asked him to have a strong army? Those with strength are the boss everywhere. A weak country has no diplomacy, while a strong country has hegemony. This was a principle that would work in any era. Yoko Ono's face turned red. She gritted her teeth and said, Your Highness, Her Majesty is already 70 years old this year. 60 years old, 70 years old is rare since ancient times. Li Xiaogong actually did not know the age of the Wenetian queen. When he heard this, he was surprised and said, Oh, so that's how it is. It seems that the queen of the ancient kingdom really wants me to enter the city to see her. When Yoko Ono heard this, she was indescribably excited. However, on the surface, she smiled and said, When I came down, Her Majesty said that if Your Highness is willing to enter the palace to see her, you will receive the grandest welcome from the Wenetian. Golden beauties at that time, Your Highness will definitely enjoy endlessly. Bastard! Li Xiaogong slammed the table and said angrily, Lowly woman, how dare you use her to charm me? Yes, yes, yes. I said something wrong. Your Highness, please forgive me. Yoko Ono was very angry, but in fact, she was constantly slapping herself in the face to beg for Li Xiaogong's forgiveness. Oomph. Since the queen of the ancient kingdom wants to see me, then I will enter the city. It just so happens that I also have something to tell her. Li Xiaogong snorted and said. Yoko Ono was overjoyed, but Li Xiao was shocked and quickly said, Your Highness, please don't. If there is an ambush in the Wenetian imperial city and you meet with any accident, I will die 1,000 times. Chapter 732. This little general is wrong. His Majesty sincerely invited Your Highness into the city as a guest. Why would he launch a sneak attack? Li Xiao's words immediately attracted Yoko Ono's rebuttal. Li Xiao coldly replied, Who doesn't know that the Japanese are treacherous and cunning? You keep saying that Tang Empire is the best country in the world, but you still dare to attack us. Who knows if you have set up an ambush in the imperial city? You. Faced with such humiliating words, Yoko Ono was so angry that his ears turned red. However, he knew where he was and what kind of situation his country was in. He suppressed his anger and said to Li Xiaogong, Your Highness, Your Highness. Your Highness, please understand. The imperial court is absolutely loyal to the great Tang. The previous lord of Sichuan County had eyes, but failed to recognize Mount Tai. His Majesty has already ordered his family to be imprisoned. My lord only wishes to discuss this with Your Highness in person, so that Your Highness' misunderstanding of the Wenetian can be resolved as soon as possible. Oomph, what a hypocrite. That's enough. That's enough. This prince has made up his mind. Li Xiao, listen to my orders. Li Xiao wanted to say more, but Li Xiaogong waved his hand and interrupted him. But Your Highness, Li Xiaogong faintly grunted, but it was as if he had the strength of 1,000 pounds, causing Li Xiao to swallow the words that were already at the tip of his tongue. This general is here. I order you to stay in the camp. The soldiers of the 3 armies are under your command. If this prince does not return before dawn, speaking till here, Li Xiaogong indifferently glanced at Yoko Ono. His gaze seemed to have an intense, penetrating power, piercing straight into Yoko Ono's heart. His tone was calm, but within the calmness was a dense killing intent. If this prince does not return before dawn, tomorrow, you'll have the army at sea bring the fleet back to Chang'an. Then, you will lead 12,000 soldiers to attack the city. Everyone in Fanio City, regardless of whether they are old or weak, women or children, will be killed. Yoko Ono felt a chill run down his spine. His back was instantly soaked in cold sweat. This general obeys. Li Shao clasped his fist and shouted. Then, he glared at Yoko Ono with his red eyes. Your Highness, it's not safe for you to be alone. If you don't mind, why don't you let me accompany you? At this moment, an iron tower-like man with a curly beard walked in from outside the tent. Standing together, Yoko Ono only reached the man's waist, just like a child. The curly-bearded man was the curly-bearded guest. It couldn't be said that he was lying outside the tent to eavesdrop. For a martial arts expert of his level, his 5 senses were 10 times sharper than an ordinary person. In addition, the soundproofing of the tent wasn't good. Therefore, the conversation between Li Shaogong and Yoko Ono was clearly heard by the bearded guest. Since Zhong Jian is willing to go with us, that's for the best. Li Shaogong chuckled. He wasn't a hothead who blindly liked to fight. He was very clear about the mission he had on his shoulders. Naturally, he was willing to bring along this expert with him. As for Yoko Ono, she was already scared out of her wits. She didn't dare to refute, nor did she have the ability to refute. Li Shaogong said a few more words and then brought the curly-bearded guest out of the tent. He mounted the horse and headed for the Wei Nation's imperial city, Fanio capital. As for where the horse came from, it was obviously a spoil of war that he seized along the way. Although ordinary people didn't know that the Tang Dynasty's prince was going to enter the imperial city to have a face-to-face talk with Emperor Tu, the Wei Nation's upper echelons of officials knew about it the moment Li Shaogong and the curly-bearded guest entered the city. In a manor in the west of Fanio capital, there were pavilions, terraces, and ponds. The design of the manor was very similar to the Tang Dynasty's gardens. In an elegant attic, Su Wei was kneeling in front of the window. He was seriously wiping a Japanese sword. It could be seen that the shape of the Japanese sword was 60 to 70% similar to the Emmo sword of the Central Plains. The body of the sword reflected the candlelight on his face, making his face look extremely cold. Is the news true? Su Wei asked indifferently. It's absolutely true. Behind Su Wei, a man in a black robe was kneeling. The man's head was covered with a wide hat, preventing others from seeing his face. This Tang Dynasty's prince has really eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. He dares to enter the imperial city with just 2 people. A trace of anger flashed across Su Wei's face. He was mainly angry that Li Shaogong, as a prince of a country, didn't play by the rules and dared to take the risk alone. A few hours ago, he had boasted in the imperial court that if Li Shaogong dared to come to Fanio capital, he would crawl to the imperial court in the future. But now, it was simply a slap in the face. The man in the black robe knelt on the ground and didn't answer. The attic fell into silence. After a long while, Su Wei snorted angrily. No, we can't let the prince of the Tang Dynasty leave the city alive. Naoju, go find a chance to kill him. After killing him, the Tang Dynasty's army will be leaderless and will definitely panic. At that time, the provisions and supplies on the thousands of ships will all belong to the Su family. The man in the black robe didn't immediately agree. He actually replied indifferently. The prince of the Tang Dynasty is an expert. I'm not sure. Sui was furious. He stood up and pointed at the man in the black robe. Bastard. If you don't want to go, just say that you don't want to go. Why are you looking for excuses? Don't forget who was the one who saved your dog life back then. If it weren't for me, you would have died in my father's hands. From the moment I saved you, you were just a dog in my hands. You had to bite whoever I told you to bite. Do you understand? The black-robed man's body clearly paused. From the blue veins on his hands, one could still see the anger in his heart. After a long while, he said in a calm voice, I'll help you kill this person, and you give me back my freedom. Otherwise, except for me, No one in the Wen nation can kill the prince of the Tang Dynasty. Are you negotiating with me? Sui pointed at his nose with a stunned expression. The man in the black robe was silent. It was a tacit agreement. You son of a bitch. Who gave you the guts to talk about conditions with me? Suimo. Sui scolded angrily and kicked the man in the black robe. As a result, it was as if he kicked a big mountain. His toes immediately felt a sharp pain, but the man in the black robe knelt in the same place and didn't move. I have already repaid you a lot for saving my life. Master, don't push your luck. The man in the black robe still said without raising his head. Good, very good. Sui took 2 deep breaths and then said, I'll do as you say. If you kill the prince of the Tang Dynasty tonight, I will immediately give you back your freedom. From now on, my family will have nothing to do with you. Get out of here. Chapter 733. With a creak, the black-robed man walked out of the attic. Judging from his light footsteps, he was still very happy. Mother of the river, I will soon be able to fly away with you and leave Japan. You must wait for me. The black-robed man thought silently in his heart. Bang, bang, bang. In the attic, the angry Sui was crazily smashing things. As he smashed, he scolded, You are just a F** king dog. How dare you negotiate with me? Good. Very good. After this, I will definitely make you suffer a fate worse than death. Master, this man is too arrogant. Do you want me to bring people to kill him? A man wearing a warrior's uniform carefully bowed behind Su with Xie and said, You? If you could beat him, I would have asked you to kill him long ago. Why wait until now? Sui was even angrier when he heard this. He casually took a teacup and smashed it on the man's head. With a bang, the man's head was instantly broken and bleeding. Trash. The family has trained you for so many years, but all of you combined can't even beat one Eastern Han Jiju. What a bunch of trash. Sui Xia was still not satisfied. He stepped forward and started punching and kicking while cursing with vulgarities. Back then, Eastern Han Jiju forcefully took my sister. My father gathered the top 10 experts of Japan to kill him. If I didn't see that he was strong in martial arts and secretly saved him, he would have long become a lonely ghost. Now that my father is dead, this dog thinks that no one can control him. How dare he negotiate with me? Oof. Go and bring my sister to my room. At this point, the expression on Sui's face suddenly became a little perverted. And with his description, the identity of the black-robed man was obvious. He was the assassin that Sui sent to assassinate Emperor Chongjun, the top expert of Japan, Eastern Han Jiju. In August 587 AD, China was in the 7th year of Sui Kai Wang at that time. Sui supported the Prince of the Bow's tribe to ascend the throne, and he became Emperor Chongjun. At that time, Kitaheim, the current Empress Dowager, became the Empress Dowager. 591, 4th year of Emperor Chongjun. Emperor Chongjun discussed with his officials. In order to recover the lost land of Rinna, he sent 20,000 troops to Zuzi and an envoy to Xinluo. At this moment, all the political power was in the hands of Sui, which made Emperor Chongjun unhappy. In 592, 5th year of Emperor Chongjun, in October, someone presented a pig to Emperor Chongjun. Emperor Chongjun pointed at the pig and said, One day, I will chop off the head of the pig and kill the people I hate. He then gathered a large army. From Heavenly Emperor Chongjun's words, Su Wumon knew that Heavenly Emperor Chongjun was determined to kill him. In the 11th month of the same year, Suomazi sent an assassin to assassinate Emperor Chongjun. After that, Naoju of the Eastern Han raped Suoma's daughter, who was as beautiful as a flower and was known as the #1 beauty in Neon. Furious, Su Wuma gathered the top 10 experts to kill East Han Jiju. Everyone thought that East Han Jiju was dead. No one would have thought that Suoma's son, Suoma's brother, would actually save the enemy of the Suo family. No one would have thought that East Han Jiju would develop true feelings for Suoma. However, East Han Jiju would never have expected that his sweetheart had already been killed by someone. At that time, the Neon people were so perverted In fact, in ancient Neon, marriage between close relatives was very common. From the emperor to the commoners, marriage between brothers and sisters of different mothers was very common. This could be seen in the historical records. There were even cases of brothers and sisters of the same mother marrying each other. At that time, brothers and sisters of different mothers were able to naturally get married or have relations with each other because they did not live in the same family. The sense of closeness between them was very weak or even non-existent. There was also no concept of kinship. It was often difficult to determine the father, and the family system was not perfect. According to the historical records, after the death of the 19th emperor of Neon, according to the rules, the crown prince, Prince Muley no K, inherited the throne. However, before he ascended the throne, he fell in love with his sister from the same mother. He had an affair with her. In the dead of the night, he visited his sister and left many romantic and unrestrained love songs. One day, he had the opportunity to sneak into his sister's boudoir. He was so happy that he could not help but sing in a low voice. If the mountain is too high, the underground pipes will be buried to water it. The sister that I secretly fell in love with, the wife that I secretly cried for behind my back. Tonight, let me love to my heart's content. The love songs that the crown prince wrote were spread out and had a very bad influence among the nobles. This young lady was a famous beauty in Neon history. Many Neon history books also called her Queen of Clothing. It was probably because she liked to wear transparent and sexy clothes. In the face of such a sexy beauty, it was no wonder that her brother loved the beauty and not the country. Not to mention others, just look at the current empress of Nigu. She was the imperial concubine of Emperor Minda, and Emperor Minda was her half-brother. There was also the deceased Crown Prince Shungda. According to the records, Crown Prince Shungda's parents were half-siblings with Emperor Qinming as their father. The perverts of the Neon people could be seen from this. As a standard fourth-generation emperor, the eldest brother of the mountain back naturally had a lot of power in his hands. At this moment, in a house in the east of Fanio City, the eldest brother of the mountain back was discussing matters with his subordinates. As one of the actual rulers of the Niga dynasty, Crown Prince Shungda could barely be considered an emperor. Master, the commandery prince of the Tang kingdom is about to enter the palace. I think the Su family has received the news earlier than us. An old man with a goatee cupped his hands and said to the eldest brother of the mountain back. The eldest brother of the mountain back smiled and said, "The commandery prince of the Tang kingdom is really a hero. This time, Su Wani will probably lose face." Obviously, he thought of Su Wani's bold words in the imperial court earlier. The old man shook his head and said with a worried expression, "Master, you can't be too optimistic. We have to be careful of Su Wani's desperate actions and killing people." The eldest brother of the mountain back was shocked and said in horror, "How dare he? That's the commandery prince of the Tang kingdom." "Sir, are you worrying too much?" The old man said earnestly, "The Su family has always liked to take risks. This time, the Tang kingdom has brought a huge amount of supplies. It's hard to guarantee that Su Wani won't be tempted and take risks out of desperation. Moreover, the commandery prince of the Tang kingdom has agreed to the emperor's appointment, which can be considered a loss of face for Su Wani. This person is extremely narrow-minded and is likely to retaliate. Master, you have to be careful." Chapter 734. You're right. I'll go to the palace to meet the emperor. Koizumi Inada. Leave the mansion immediately and guard the palace gate. Once the commandery prince of the Tang kingdom leaves the palace, follow him and protect him secretly. After listening to the old man's analysis, the mountain back elder brother nodded in agreement and then ordered his men. "Yes, I'll take my men there now." Koizumi Inada responded and then turned to leave. The mountain back elder brother stood up and saluted the old man, saying, "The emperor's health is deteriorating day by day, and the barbarians of the Su kingdom are ready to make trouble. Even if I can't be the next emperor, I can't let the barbarians of the Sioux Kingdom disturb the court. I'll leave everything in the mansion to you, sir. I have to go to the palace now." The mountain-back elder brother was the most potential candidate for the next emperor in Neon, so he said that. The old man bowed slightly and replied, "Don't worry, master. I'll make sure the mansion is safe." The mountain-back big brother nodded his head in satisfaction and then left with his 2 personal bodyguards. It was late at night, but Faenio capital was obviously different from before. The whole city seemed to be brewing a storm. The palace was in the center of the storm and seemed particularly depressing. The palace maids and bodyguards also seemed to feel this pressure. They all walked with their heads down. Some people didn't dare to look up and talk even if they were familiar with each other. They had been in the palace for many years and were the most sensitive to changes in the atmosphere. Half an hour later, in the Neon Palace. Why did the commandery prince of Shangwa send troops here? In the palace, the Queen of Neon and Li Shaogong sat opposite each other. Although she was a superior existence in Neon, in front of Li Shaogong, the commandery prince of the Tang Kingdom, who held real power, she was not stupid enough to treat Li Shaogong the same way she treated the Neon subjects. The bearded man stood behind Li Shaogong. Although his face was expressionless, his 5 senses and his legs were already in the best state of alert. As long as there was any movement in the room, he was confident that he could protect Li Shaogong and capture the Queen of Tuigu at the first moment. This was the confidence of a master who was half a step away from the great Grandmaster realm. "Queen of Neon, you could speak Chinese?" That's right, the sentence just now was indeed in Chinese. Although it wasn't accurate, it was enough to make Li Shaogong feel very surprised. Everyone in Wanation admires the culture of the Central Plains. Although I am the Queen of Wanation, I have also yearned for the Tang Empire for a long time. Therefore, if a nation offends you in any way, I hope your Highness can forgive us on account of our admiration for the Tang Empire. Wanation will be eternally grateful. The Empress Dowager of Gu was very humble. Not only did she not refer to herself as the Empress, she even used her own name to refer to herself. It was clear that she was well aware that with the current strength of the Wa, opposing the Great Tang was no different from striking a rock with an egg. On the side, Yoko Ono's heart was in turmoil. If it weren't for the Empress Dowager asking him to listen, he would have even forgotten the Empress's real name. Li Shaogong was very satisfied with the Empress Dowager's attitude, but he didn't show it on his face. After a while, he said, "I will remember the Empress's kindness. But this time, I led the Tang Empire's fleet south for trade. On the way back, I was attacked by a group of pirates. I lost dozens of soldiers because of this. These pirates are from Wanation. What does the Empress have to say?" Although his voice was soft, there was a hint of killing intent in it. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly dropped to the freezing point. The bearded man also clenched his hands, ready to deal with the Wanation's falling out at any time. The Empress Dowager's expression changed slightly. She had never heard that the Tang Empire's fleet had been attacked. Li Shaogong's words caught her off guard. But after all, she had been on the throne for nearly 40 years and had the ability to adapt on the spot. After a long pause, she got up and bowed to Li Shaogong, then said, "After such a thing happened, as the Empress of the Wanation, Empress Dowager Ida cannot absolve herself from the blame for not governing the people well. Your Highness, please tell us the specific identity of the pirates. The Wanation will do its best to help your Highness find the leader of the pirates. I only hope that your Highness will not implicate the innocent." Li Shaogong was secretly surprised. The old woman in front of him seemed to be full of wisdom. She could always make the right choice in a critical moment, and for the sake of the Wanation, she was flexible. To tell the truth, Li Shaogong was not afraid of unreasonable people because he believed in the strength of the Tang army. He had brought 12,000 Tang soldiers with him, and if they were ruthless, they would be invincible in the Wanation. But in the face of the Empress Dowager, who had always been very humble, Li Shaogong was still very afraid. Of course, he knew the story of Go Jian, the king of Yu. He was very worried that the Wanation would become the next Yu. Fortunately, the Empress Dowager was old and did not have much time left. Otherwise, he would have to remind the heir to be wary of the One Nation. The leader of the pirates is called Nakamura Kawayu. It is said that he has been wandering in the southeast sea of the Tang Empire. In the battle that night, he was seriously injured, but he is definitely not dead. Li Shaogong stared at the Empress Dowager and replied word by word. Nakamura Kawayu. Before the Empress Dowager spoke, the big brother king next to her couldn't help but exclaim. Seeing the Empress Dowager's inquiring eyes, he cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, this person has been wanted by all the counties in the One Nation." Later, he had nowhere to escape, so he roamed the sea and robbed merchant ships everywhere. The officers of the coastal counties received reports from merchants, but this person's whereabouts are uncertain, and the authorities have no way to catch him. The Empress Dowager heard this and said with a gloomy face, "Bastard! Such a heinous person does not deserve to be a citizen of the One Nation. Immediately issue a decree that all the county princesses of the coastal counties should organize an arrest team in the shortest time. We must catch Nakamura Kawayu within 10 days. Yes. A guard next to her stepped forward and bowed. Yes, it was indeed a guard, not a eunuch. In ancient times, there were no eunuchs in the One Nation. Since ancient times, Japan had also been a country with a strong warrior spirit. Many Japanese men regarded their own lifeblood as their life. That was to say, no Japanese was willing to enter the palace to be a eunuch. Even if they starved to death, they would not be a eunuch. This cut off the root of the Japanese idea of eunuchs. In addition, Japan was an island country surrounded by the sea, and the island was rich in resources, wild animals, and fruits. In ancient times, the Japanese could fish for a living, hunt, and even pick wild fruits in the forest for a living. Even if they did not surrender to the imperial court, they would not starve to death. Therefore, due to the geographical environment and rich economic crops in ancient Japan, the Japanese would not be forced to enter the palace to be eunuchs. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.